Hello and welcome to Lorehammer, a 40K podcast. I'm your host this time, Trevor Buzak. We got a fun episode ahead of us. We're talking hive cities and highborns. Here's my favorite highborn, Gerald. Welcome.
Hello. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Hello, peasants.
Jeez, yeah, there we go. That's a pomp enough voice. I apologize to anyone who's watching. I'm just trying to figure out how to pop us up on the live screen here, but we'll carry on. We also got Nick joining us. Welcome, buddy.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, we're gonna be this episode was actually your idea. So you're like, let's talk hive cities. I don't know much about them. I want to learn, and I'm like, I got you, homie.
Yeah, the more that I've kind of done a little bit of a dive into hive cities, I've come to realize that they are the most grimdark out of 40K you can get. Like, if I had to put things into a tier, I'd say they're like in the top 10% of the most bleak. Absolutely.
But you get all the corpse starch you can eat, so that's okay.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Yep. Too bad it doesn't taste
but
like
before
anything.
No, that's like they have like those ramen noodle packages of flavoring that you can sprinkle in your corpse starch. Give it a little chicken flavor. Delicious.
Yep. Because the average person probably knows exactly what chicken tastes like.
So a little bit of housekeeping. Good news, everyone. Lorehammer is recording twice a week. You know, we got some more crews building. For example, we got Gerald and Nick joining the show as hosts, and I think Lorehammer is able to make two episodes a week, and I'm hyped for that. The more Lorehammer, the better. There's so many times where I get messages where I'm like, I'm at work for 8 hours a day. I listen to you for that long, and then I go home and I listen to you for another 8 hours, and then I listen to you when I go to bed, and now I'm on my sixth listen. So I think this will be healthier for you instead of just listening to the same stuff over and over. If we just up the content.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely fall into that category. I work a full-time job outside of this, and I have my headphones in all day long listening to podcasts. I mean, it makes a world of difference.
I mean, truth be told, I drive in my car most of the day for my job, and so what do I listen to? Not music, Lorehammer.
Lorehammer all day, every day. So yeah, I'm super hyped about kind of increasing the show's content production, and excited to see where these kind of new little Lorehammer teams take us. And it kind of brings up a new thing. Like now that we're doing live streams and stuff, we can have multiple guests. We could do call-ins where I used to make you people come to my house, into my garage to record with me and get fondled by Eric. But now you can do it from the safety of your own home. So I'm quite excited about the opportunity that presents of doing it live. So to get involved in kind of that, or to get involved in anything that we're doing, the best way to do that is join the Discord. We got lots of stuff going on there. It's the best way to kind of keep up to date with what we're doing. For example, we are doing movie nights on Sunday night. We just watched Starship Troopers last Sunday, and that was pretty fun.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah.
Would you like to know more?
Yes, I would. We also have another Discord event going on that's probably going to be a month-long kind of campaign, and it's called Arbites versus Gang Warfare. And I'll talk a little bit more about what this actually means after we give you the context of hive cities and highborns in this episode. There's these factions at play here, and there's so much to include. So we're kind of going to go on a little story arc together, where this episode we're going to be talking, hive cities and highborn. And then the next episode, we're going to be talking about gangs and criminal organizations as a whole, because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of like black market kind of rogue trader-esque things going on. And then on the flip side of that, we got the justice system of the Adeptus Arbites. And I can tell you, nothing is more swift than a bolter to the head. We're talking a little bit more about that.
Judge, jury, executioner.
Lover.
I am the law.
Yeah, sorry everyone in the chat, just trying to figure out how to do this StreamYard. Normally James is in charge of the StreamYarding, but I will get to that once I figure out how. I'm just kind of talking and I can't multitask, one of those plebes like that. But yeah, we got live streaming. Speaking of that.
Yes, we do have live stream, and to be a part of the live stream, just join the Patreon, and then the day of the live stream, Mark or one of us will definitely give you plenty of notice, and then the link will come up. So just click on that link, and then you'll be able to join the live stream. Lots of fun. And then also just let one of us know if you would like to call in as a guest, because we love having that at the end of our episodes. So just feel free to give us a shout.
Yeah,
fun times all around.
The call-ins at the end is definitely one of my favorite parts of it, being able to hear from the community, answer all sorts of questions. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, like you were one of our first call-in, Nero. So I'm like, oh man, that guy did such a good job. I think I got to have him on more.
And look what it has become. So yeah, it's definitely worth it to join us. Speaking of joining, make sure that you join the Imperial Tithe and support the show. Even $1 a day makes a huge difference. If you're listening to it on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts and you get tired of all the ads on there, you can do the ad-free version on our Patreon. I think it's like $1 or $2. But yeah, it really helps out the show. Lets us give you bigger, better things.
Yeah, exactly. And that ad-free version is sweet on Patreon. I'm still kind of setting that up. I think we have our first 100 episodes on there for ad-free, but I got to remember how to do that process. I've never been the producer of this show. I've always just been the dick maker, joke maker kind of guy. So I'm still kind of working out some of how you work that back end stuff out. But yeah, that's the goal. There's going to be a bunch of ad-free versions on there, so go check out the Patreon. But enough housekeeping. Let's get to what you came to. We're talking hive cities and highborns. So let's start off with hive cities. A hive city, or simply a hive, stands as a towering testament to humanity's tenacity and decay within the Imperium of man. Each one of these vast archaeologies is a city world unto itself, a massive, self-contained fortress housing millions, sometimes billions, of human souls who labor under the Emperor's ever-watchful gaze. Hive cities are scattered across the urban hellscapes of hive worlds, densely populated planets whose sole purpose is to fuel the Imperium's insatiable hunger for resources and industry. Erected over millennia, many hive cities trace their origins back to the ancient age of technology, long before the Emperor's ascendance. Built from layers upon layers of rockcrete and adamantium, each hive is a towering man-made mountain. These colossal structures are forged from thousands of residential and industrial zones, stacked relentlessly, tier upon tier. The summits of these grim bastions are crowned by immense spires that claw skyward, home to the rare-field upper classes who watch over the sprawling cityscape from their lofty heights. I've been playing a game called Return to Moria, and you can build one level and it's fine. You build 2 level and things start to get a little sketchy. You build 3 levels and all of a sudden the bottom foundation starts to take some strain. You build that 4th level and then all of a sudden your whole building collapses in upon itself. And I just picture these hive cities, these mile tall hive cities of just rockcrete and adamantium. And I can picture their foundations. I was an electrician and I remember some of the concrete foundations that were poured for these just tiny warehouse buildings that we were working on. But you would have these mile thick concrete adamantium support columns that no airplane is going to burn through with their jet fuel, I'm sure.
Yeah, some of these spires, they reach into the upper atmosphere, like almost into the border of space. It's crazy. I guess when you live near the top, you don't want to see what's below you.
Yep. Yeah.
Shit flows downhill is what I hear. So
yeah, absolutely.
As one ascends within the hive, so too does the concentration of wealth and power, until reaching the soaring spires where nobility hold their decadent courts far above the masses. Below them lies crushing stratification of society, from the bustling manufactorums of the mid-levels to the choking smog-filled forges in the depths. Each tier is a world apart, and beneath it all, beyond the reach of the hive's industrial heart, lurks the underhive, a vast slum where sunlight is a forgotten myth and brutal gangs and twisted mutants rule. Hive cities rarely stand alone. Instead, they cluster in immense, closely packed groups called hive clusters, often dotting the surface of a hive world like festering sores. A single hive world may boast thousands of these towering, self-sufficient metropolises, each an engine of ceaseless production and survival, feeding the Imperium's unrelenting need for supplies, weapon, and labor. Originally conceived as bastions of the human civilization, that could preserve their planet's biosphere, hive cities have long since lost any pretense of harmony with their environment. The age of strife stripped away advanced technologies that once enabled balance, leaving behind colossal structures that belch unending torrents of waste. Each hive city now produces mountains of industrial runoff and detritus that poison the surrounding land. The surface of many hive worlds is a toxic wasteland, deadly deserts of ash where only hardy mutants dare to roam. These ash wastes are home to raiders who prey upon the train-like armored convoys transporting people and goods between distant hives, daring to survive in a world where life itself is an unrelenting fight against decay.
Yeah, I mean, imagine just living in one of these places, just a city so big that you can't even imagine it, like it just outside the scope of human understanding, but at its core, it's just rotting away.
Yeah. I love the picture of these like just the waste that they produce and these giant pipes that they just pump out of their city, and then it just creates this nasty mess, and all the mutants that would spawn from it and all the chaos of leaving the hive. There's a lot of cool movies like Snowpiercer almost, where that you got these cool trains that are shooting across these like crazy environments, and just all the ambushes that would happen, and yeah, so cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gives you just very kind of Mad Max feel to it. Like it could be, you could be on a snow planet and just the mountains and mountains of just trash everywhere that you're having to fight through, while these trains and trade transports and everything's just crisscrossing. Or it could be like a desert, like it's an endless amount of possibilities, really.
I mean, if I'm being honest, like this is taking out the Star Wars fanboy in me, pre Disney Star Wars, mind you. Like because any fans of like the games like back in the early 2000s, like Knights of the Old Republic, like you got Coruscant, that's the famous one where the entire planet's one big city. It's built on layers and layers and layers. And then one of the games you have Taris, Taris, and it's actually divided into different sections depending on your. It's basically like a hive city, but without all the grimdark like 40K does. So,
yeah, when I picture Coruscant, the buildings are sleek and round, and the glass is clean and shiny, and there's beautiful hover cars all working in perfect unison, crisscrossing the planet. No, not in 40K. It is a bleak, gothic construction where the walls are not only made of adamantium and rockcrete, it's also made of human bones and skulls. So that's always nice.
Oh yeah, and you've got a population that's so large you can't even count how many there are. It just makes like doing some sort of census an impossible task. And most of these people that are living in these hive cities have never left. They've never set foot on their home planet. They've never seen the sky before. Just living in these overcrowded areas. Just the concept alone is hard to fathom.
Yeah. Millions or billions of people. Just rank. That would just be the most grossest place ever.
Like if we're being honest, like when you think of the grim darkness, quote unquote, the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, this is exactly what comes to mind. Living in one of the worst hive cities imaginable, in the worst conditions. If not a forge world, then a hive city is what really brings out the grim dark of 40K.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just imagine water's such a valuable resource. Most people probably aren't bathing or showering on a regular basis, and air is being purified through filters that are thousands of years old. I mean, you'd go nose blind in probably no time at all.
Yeah. But just imagine all the cool, like, different type of alcoholic drinks they make off this weird, like, even the water is fermented somehow. So, at least there's that.
Natural fermentation.
It brings a whole new meaning to the term sparkling water.
Oh god.
But now I guess we could get a little segue into the layout of a hive city, since we're talking about layers upon layers. So to live in a hive city is to exist in a world unto itself. a claustrophobic labyrinth where concepts like the sky, ground, or open horizon are alien myths. For countless souls, the rest of their planet is as distant as the stars themselves. Within these towering structures, entire sectors and layers have collapsed or been built over, sealing off regions and leaving behind forgotten ruins that harbor treasures of unspeakable value. Lost caches of archaeotech, previous remnants of the age of technology, lie hidden in these darkened depths, preserved through the age of strife as echoes of a more advanced time. The zones of a hive city reflect its crushing and social hierarchy, stacked from its blighted outskirts to the distant spires, each layer representing a world apart in status and suffering.
Yeah, it would be wild, all the different technology that you would find in there. Like, these things are older than the Imperium of Man itself. And just the technology that you would find, if it still works, it could be just game changing, really. But unfortunately, it's been buried in the collapsed section of a tower, locked away under vaulting key, or protected by some gang that, is worshiping this crazy relic that they don't even know what it does, but they're like, I know it's valuable.
Oh yeah. When I was doing a little bit of reading into hive cities, I don't want to get too far ahead or anything, but as some of the very early hive cities that were created were possibly built from the generational spacecraft during the dark age of technology, where they dismantled these ships and then used that as like their beginning foundations. So there could be sections of like a hive city that's powered off of this just tens of thousands year old like nuclear reactor. But just all those different sort of technologies that have been lost to the decades, either, yeah, as you were saying, Mark, through the collapse, or just in areas that are just so dangerous no one dares to venture down, either from the criminal gangs or the pollution or poison that resides deep down.
Yeah, like I would imagine just like how you can get accustomed to any environment. Like I'm a Canadian that moved to Panama, and that Panama sun is hot, but I acclimatized to it. And I imagine like let's say you're a highborn and you want to kind of go down and down and down, you'd almost have to take these stops and like kind of acclimatize yourself to different conditions as you go deeper and deeper. And you might have to spend a month in these spots even just to let your ears kind of adjust and get your senses back or whatever.
Yeah, so you don't get the sorry, go ahead.
Wild to think that the opposite is true. Like, you got those climbers that climb Mount Everest, and you have to stop at certain points so you're used to like the thinner atmosphere. It's just wild to think that you can do that in reverse when you go deeper down into these hive cities.
Yeah, what is it called for like scuba divers? Is it called the bends, I think?
Yeah, the bends. Yep.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where you have to go down a certain depths and then let your pressure adjust, and then you can kind of go down again and let it adjust. And if you don't, it will make you really, really fucking sick.
Yeah, absolutely. And right. And you were mentioning, Gerald, about Mount Everest and the people that have frozen on the mountain that have become like landmarkers. I can imagine you're traveling down deeper into these hives and you just, oh, look, there's Greg. Wait here. And then we got to acclimatize real quick. And then we'll head down here in like the next week or so when our lungs have gotten used to all the pollution.
Yeah, your little servitor Sherpa tagging along, carrying your gear for you.
I guess while we're talking about the dangers of the lower levels, let's get started into these different zones, as we'll call it. So you got the outskirts. Here on the very edges of the hive, life is precarious, yet offers a hint of freedom unknown within the hive's core. Without the hive's limited power grids, residents scrape by on portable fusion or petroleum-driven generators, eking out a harsh existence in the toxic waste surrounding the hive. Ashen Desert stretch as far as the eye can see, populated only by hardy mutants and raiders who wage an endless struggle to survive. Although life in the outskirts is perilous, its inhabitants live outside the rigid confines of imperial law and the brutal realities of the Underhive's constant gang warfare, claiming a rare and dangerous independence. So, gamer brain here, this is kind of making me think of Pandora from the Borderlands series. At least the first game is nothing but like an irradiated wasteland. So all you're dealing with just like these psychotic mutants, mutants, bandits, anything and everything, crazy robots, crazy creatures. It's
Oh
wild.
yeah, like it's easy to think of the mutant humans that you would encounter, but just imagine the wildlife you would encounter and these crazy like mutant ambles or something that now have 8 arms instead of their normal 2, and they can breathe fire for some reason because they've been eating the toxic stew for too long. Yeah, the animals you could encounter would just be wild.
I know on Necromunda, on a lot of their hive cities, they have an indigenous fauna called Curatids. They're like these blue, they look almost like babies, like cherubs, but they've got bat wings. And they live in the air ducts of the hive cities. But the funny thing is, they're not a hostile thing. They are attracted to people who are very charismatic, and they're seen as a good luck omen to the hivers of the city.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's
Do they have like some
wild.
type of psychic power? Do you know, or like?
I have no idea. I mean, I can imagine they have some sort of empathetic psyker ability to be able to kind of pick up on people's emotions. But yeah, just wild.
I'm just picturing now these sleeping little bat babies hanging upside down from pipes. And you like open the door and all these sleeping little bat babies jump down and fly out, like scatter everywhere. Oh, wonderful.
Fantastic.
Ursat says people turned into animals. Yeah, that would be the other thing in the way. So you got these things that just are like, I don't even know what your base form was. You're so far gone. Like you are 15,000 years lost in the genetic drift of this toxic stew. Somehow you keep reproducing, but like who knows where you came from?
What do we even classify you? We got another question from Grimaldus here. Is there any images? Well, I'm sure there definitely are some artwork. So
Yeah. I can maybe figure out how to present some screens and share some artwork with you. I'll work on that throughout the course of the show. Thank you guys for being patient. I did end up getting the cameras working and stuff. And yeah, now my next kind of learning lesson is to pull up some artwork for you.
all right. While I guess Mark or Nick are researching, we got some more layers of the hive city to talk about. We have the underhive. Beneath the hive's industrial depths lies the underhive, a forsaken wasteland where the exiled, destitute, and desperate fight for survival. Here, the law was dead. Power has long since been shut off by the hive's authorities, leaving darkness and violence as the ruling forces. Crime is not only unchecked, but thrives, and brutal gangs enforce a chaotic order where only the strong survive. Technology is the sole currency, and a single piece of working equipment can elevate a lowly gang member to temporary dominance until someone with greater strength, cunning, or firepower takes it by force. The underhive rejects the presence of outsiders, viewing the upper levels with disdain and mistrust.
Yeah, crazy.
So this really harkens back to, like, again, Knights of the Old Republic, one of the cities, the Planet City terrace. You travel through the different layers, and then you have the Undercity, which basically it just directly translates over to what you would probably see in 40K. Completely lawless. Only the exiles and mutants are there. If you're in any of the upper levels, you're automatically treated with like distrust and disdain.
Yeah,
not a good place to live.
Somebody's always trying to sell you like death sticks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You want to buy some death sticks? You don't want to buy me death sticks. I don't want to buy you death sticks.
All right, I've got a question for you guys. How do you think Batman would fare living in the Underhive?
Business is good. Cracks, knuckles, and skulls.
They don't pay me enough for this. I'm Batman.
Yeah, my question, I guess, for how he would fare is, are we talking old school Batman where he actually used to kill people, or new school Batman? Because new school Batman where he's not willing to kill people, I don't think is going to fare very well in the Underhive.
No, not at all.
Yeah, there's just so many cool pictures. I just Googled image hive cities, and you get a billion different pictures of what a hive city could look like. Or even this one, you got, 5 different hive cities or hive clusters all kind of close together. It would just be such a thing. I'm sure even these structures are so fucking huge that they would mess with like the gravity of the planet, like it might even throw the spin of the planet off if you stack too many hive cities on one side of the planet or something. Might give the planet this weird wobble.
I think.
Well, we definitely
I heard-
know it messes with the ecology.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I think I actually saw a YouTube video one time of like actual astrologists, astronomers, not astrologists. I'm an idiot sometimes. And they were talking about like how realistic some of the planets in 40K could be. And one of them brought up Mars and the Iron Ring. And because the Iron Ring is actually tethered to the planet in like a solid, with like solid pillars. So they said, basically, they said you could make that work, but you have to really figure out how to make sure the ring follows the rotation of Mars, so the whole thing doesn't just come apart and come crashing down.
Yeah. Like you would imagine just the engineering logistics of it is fucking magic essentially. Like, you know, the further away you are to that spin, the faster you have to fucking go. So
Yeah.
all that weight and strain and it just I'm no space guy, so I don't know how to do that, but I know it'd be tough.
I will definitely link those videos and put them in the Discord at some point because it's very interesting. Because like they go over like Terra, Mars, Barbarous, Tanith, Catachan, stuff like, you know, all the famous planets, and like can it really actually exist? That's the interesting part.
Well,
so,
you know, we tried to get Henry Cavill on. Maybe we need to try to get Elon Musk on. He knows space stuff. He can tell us if hive cities are reasonable or not.
But don't you know he's going to be the founder of the Adeptus Mechanicus when he moves to Mars? All right. Speaking of Mars, we have the lower hive. Very bad segue. I apologize for that. I'm here all night.
Yes.
Right. Rising above the underhive's lawless expanse is the lower hive, a vast churning hive of industry and labor. Here, the working class toils endlessly within the manufactoria and power plants that keep the hive alive. Though this layer houses the colossal plasma fusion generators fueling the entire city, its inhabitants must pay dearly for every flicker of light. Luxuries are almost non-existent, and survival means laboring without end. These people live humble lives, raising families, clinging to a devout faith in the Emperor, and forever grateful that they do not reside below in the darkness.
Yeah, it's such a crazy thought to think that these don't have light and that like they never see the light of day. And they're probably using the gross lights that give you headaches and stuff. They're not using nice sleek LEDs, places that, you know, you can color change them. They're fancy. Yeah, no, they're probably like intentionally designed to drive you mad and control people. There's some crazy light technology out there now that, yeah, you can, I think it's some type of purple light that's like hypnotizing. You know, I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I just read conspiracy theories online. So look out for purple lights. That's all I can tell you.
It's strange because there's some street lights that give off a purple light now, and they used to be blue or white. Things that make you go,
yeah, man. What are they up to? They're throwing us all into some type of chaotic chaos here.
So I can't remember which book it's from, but I remember reading too the description of one of the inside of the hive cities. It says it's almost perpetually like twilight is the level of darkness inside of these. There's like glow orbs that illuminate some of the areas, but for the most part, yeah, it's fairly dark. You think just you have generations over generations of these people living there. Your eyes are just going to get adjusted to the gloom over time.
Yeah, and then you get all these types of weird mutants that, like, maybe they're not so much mutants, but maybe more like abhumans. Somebody mentioned, Ursats in the chat said scalies are scary enough, but that on crack. But like, just imagine, yeah, the eyes of these people over the generations would adjust to the low light, and maybe they have these massive pupils and stuff there where they don't even have the whites of the eyes anymore. It's just all pupil just to let that amount of light in. Crazy shit to be in a hive world.
Yeah, it's like you step out, the door opens, and it's like the thing where it's just the bright light and you lose all sense of your vision for a little bit. Just because your eyes aren't adjusted to the what actual sunlight looks like.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. And I like to imagine too, like with like if you follow typical, I guess, like population density, like, yeah, the Underhive is going to have like its fair share of outcasts and mutants and gangs or whatnot, and then same thing with like the outskirts of the Ashen Wastes. But I imagine like the lower hive of the billions upon trillions of people, that's probably where the vast majority of them are going to be, cramped up in this tiny or relatively tiny spot. We'll say, even though like the Hive City is huge, but you're still stuffing like billions of people in it. That's
Yeah. You just got these little hablocks that just like are all completely identical, and everyone gets their 5 foot by 5 foot room that has 5 people in it. So it's nice. It's a nice, easy way to remember it all.
I mean, there was a real life city in, I can't remember what, I think it's either Taiwan or China. Don't quote me, but there was a real life city called Kowloon where like the density was like 7 people per 10 square foot room. Something like that. Again, don't quote me. Submit all your complaints to James Complaints. But yeah, the density in that city was just monstrous. And
well, that's not a good enough Google search that I just did. What did you say that place was called?
Kowloon, Kowloon.
Let's see the real life equivalent. Oh yeah, that's a kind of gross looking spot there. Yeah,
yeah. That area has since been demolished, but the fact that it existed, that's probably the closest you'll get to a hive world, at least in our day and age.
Yeah, man. There's a one Judge Dredd movie from like let's call her. Yeah.
Sorry, correction from Ursats. So it was in Hong Kong. Thank you, Ursats.
There's that one Judge Dredd movie where they had the tower that he had to go and invade, and in the center the tower was hollow, and everyone just looked in at each other, and just how gross of a concept that is. That all you see is just concrete and people.
Yeah, I mean, in 40K, people are a resource, and what better way to keep growing that resource by putting millions and billions and trillions of people all together to just keep producing,
Yeah,
we're all just a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Like maybe this is a crazy tangent, but man, I swear being homosexual would be outlawed in 40K. Like you said, people are the biggest resource, and to take people away from the Emperor, that's a heinous crime, man. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do it, whatever. You can do whatever the fuck you want, but I really don't think it would be allowed, man. It's like, wait, you're not contributing to the Imperial tithe. If somebody comes from the stars every year to take a portion of our population and you ain't contributing to that? Like, you got to, man. We don't have a choice. We need bodies. It is our greatest resource.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for a single city to have roughly the birth and death rate that our world nowadays has, where you've got people being born and dying in the millions every single day, but that's just one city. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
And this brings up a point like I want to kind of talk about closer to the end when we have like closing thoughts or whatnot. But that'll wait till near the end. So reminder for myself. But enough about the depressing lower hive. Let's talk about where the rich people live. Let's talk about the upper hive. In stark contrast, the upper hive is a sanctuary for hive bureaucrats, overseers, and those connected to the planet's political and economic elite. Spacious and well lit, these levels provide ample room, reliable power, and security from the chaos below. While these residents may still be subject to the schemes of the nobility above, they lead lives of relative privilege and comfort compared to the toiling masses in the depths below, occupying an elevated rank on the imperial scale. So
yeah,
doesn't sound
too
terribly bad, or at least in comparison.
Yeah, instead of 1 million neighbors, you only have 500,000 neighbors. Perfect. I would imagine too, like the air, everything just gets slightly better the higher you get, and like even the smog and that toxicity and stuff, like these spires start rising above those cloud lines, and then you can see the actual sky, and you can see blue. You might even see a star every now and again.
Yeah, you get beef ramen noodle packets instead of chicken for your corpse starch every day. You get an extra variety in your daily sustenance.
Oh, perfect. We got a comment here from Ursats. I'd say the most 40k society's feeling would be the 17th century UK, where it's just to have 16 children and 10 die, but you need those workers to bring the money and keep it alive. Yeah, like that was a thing back in the day. You needed 10 children just so you could man your farm, you know? It's a lot of work, and many hands make light work.
Yeah, I mean, people in these hive cities, they've got to be hardier than you or I would be today. You would imagine, just from years of pollution and radiation and everything. I mean, just like on like a medical anatomic level, they probably are more resilient to like disease and stuff like that, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Another comment from Jax here. Live like rabbits, breed like rabbits. Slanesh is pleased.
No, they're not doing it for pleasure. They're doing it for utility.
In the name of the Emperor.
When you work 16 hours a day and only have like 4 to 6 hours to sleep, you think that's the first thing on their mind?
I'd imagine, man, you could get away with so much shit with a population that big. Like, okay, so you just have a bunch of children, and like you don't tell them that you have a bunch. So it's like your family's required to meet X amount of hours of weekly quota, and then you just kind of send in. The more children you have, maybe it's easier to meet that quota because you can kind of get under the radar. They don't know if you sent son number 4 or 5. They just know there's a worker on that spot that your family has been designated to fill. So it'd almost be like, yeah, you don't have any food now because you got a bunch of people, but at least you're not working 16-hour days. You're only working 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, but God forbid, do not let the Storm find that out. And then from the toppest of top of the hierarchy, we have the spires. Towering above all, the spires house the most powerful, wealthy, and influential nobility. Wealthy and influential. Nobility, planetary rulers, and off-world dignitaries. Some spires even breach their planet's cloud layers, offering views of a desolate world far removed from the filth below. The families here live in grand, villa-like estates where food, power, and advanced medical care are plentiful. But these comforts mask a more insidious threat. In the spires, a life can be taken with a whisper or a single poisoned drink, where cutthroat ambition replaces open violence, and betrayal is a currency all its own. In the Underhive, one may be killed over a crust of bread, but in the spires, your enemies will scheme and take not only your life, but your very soul.
Wild.
Yeah, the political drama of it would just be, all these highborns vying for power and plotting and scheming, and that there's always somebody ready to take your spot. That if you give up, you let up for a minute, man, there's somebody next in line. There's a billion people next in line who want your spot on this tower.
Just when you think you got it made and you're living in the spires, nope, life is utter crap for you too. Just in a different way.
That's the thing, is once you make it all the way to the top, you're just constantly, it's like a different form of fighting, but to keep that position, because you don't want to give up that life of luxury for you or your children or the generations to come, because you always want to keep them in that sort of seat of power. But it also begs the question I want to know from you guys, would you rather be an assistant to a highborn or be a regular person in the lower hive?
That's
I'm gonna go in the lower hive. I love a life of adventure and danger and fucking breaking laws. I'll break laws all day long, man. I love it. I think I'd be better suited down there to just get up to my own devices and being told what to do by a highborn. And I just imagine, man, just looking at that highborn eating his 2 bread crusts a day, and I'm like, fuck that guy. I'm eating corpse starch still.
Yeah, I think I've got to go with the lower hive. I'm a diligent worker. I can handle the factory job. Not really. Don't quote me on that. But I'd rather do that than be at the whim of a highborn that might want to make me some stool for the day or just
I feel like
crazy
it's
crap like that.
I feel like it's a concept of like upward mobility. When you're basically a slave or attendant to a highborn, there really isn't any upward mobility because that highborn's not going to promote you. He's not going to promote you to his spot, where at least in the Underhive, you might maybe become the manufactorum manager or you could just go to a life of crime and get up to your own devices, but that upward mobility is especially appealing to me, I think.
Yeah, but yeah, I would imagine you definitely have to be like that 1 in a million to take that next step. In a society where you have billions, not everyone's going to hit that spot. So, you're always trying to, I'm sure it's not the easiest of tasks to get to that next level.
But as we know, life is not supposed to be easy in the Hive. It's supposed to be fun and grim dark.
And the majority of these people too, they're not going to be educated. How can you educate that amount of people? So it's almost like ignorance is bliss. They're not thinking about the bigger picture. They're thinking, oh, how am I going to eat my next meal? How am I going to go to work and build these bolt rifles?
Yeah, and like you're saying with that education, like your education would be like, okay, your job and your family's job is to insert this one screw on this bolt gun. So your education consists of righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Pass that on to your children. It's going to be very useful. That's all you need to know.
I mean, yeah, that's all when that's going to be your life for 16 hours out of the day. That's really all the education you're going to need.
Yeah.
For the Emperor, of course.
Well, let's dive a little bit more into the life in the Hive. Hive worlds are oppressive giants harboring billions within their sprawling, labyrinthine cities that engulf entire planets. Stretching from horizon to polluted horizon, these worlds teem with human life. Yet their inhabitants live in perpetual shadow, their existence one of relentless toil, violence, and survival. In these vast industrial wastelands, countless workers labor in obscurity within manufactorums, gargantuan factories churning out endless streams of weapons, chemicals, and goods vital to the Imperium's insatiable war machine. For others, life is an unending struggle among the brutal gangs of the Underhive, where survival depends solely on wits, firepower, and unwavering resolve. Hive worlds are more than mere population centers. Oh, yep.
Speaking of wits, we got a comment from Jax. If you fuck up righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, even once, you're dying a horrible death. That's nice.
Hive worlds are more than mere population centers. They are the Imperium's lifeblood, producing the munitions that arm the Emperor's legions, mining the ore that fuels the fleets, and refining chemicals indispensable to the war effort. Yet their surfaces are bleak and barren, hostile even to human life, ravaged by centuries of unrestrained pollution. Towering constructs of adamantine and rockcrete rise across the continent, their spires climbing for kilometers into the skies, concealing within them entire nations of imperial citizens. I mean, yeah, leading back into that whole Mad Max side of things, like it's just these wastelands. And my thoughts too are when they initially colonized these worlds to build hive cities, like those worlds must have been lush and vibrant, because you're not going to build a city on like an already desolate world. It's just this pollution from over thousands of years of just destroyed it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like if you're flying through the stars, you're going to stop on the planet that's a paradise world more, or at least very resource rich, as opposed to like Swamplandia.
Well, I mean, I also like to think too, like during the dark age of technology, we were a lot smarter back then, or at least that was what the lore made it out to be. So I'd like to think we're a little bit more conscientious about that kind of stuff. But like with the Age of Strife, the Men of Iron, the Horus Heresy, and then the 10,000 years since then, like that's where we just fell by the wayside. And if you look at today, and we're now suffering the effects of 150 years of industrial revolution. So you can imagine what 10,000 years is going to do to a planet.
Yeah, like that level of technology when they first got, they're like, yeah, we can terraform planets and make them beautiful. And now 10,000 years later, they're like, yeah, we can terraform planets and make them toxic wastelands. Perfect.
Yeah, I know on Necromundia, there's so many hive cities and the pollution is so bad, it's become miles deep that I was reading, and I think it's one of the books was saying that the trash now has like a tide to it almost. So it acts up more like an ocean than an actual like ground. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like this
crazy.
sludge garbage just kind of going. Or oh yeah, that's horrendous. Um, Another kind of fun thing, just for scale of just like, oh my god, what are we dealing with here? Some of these spires are like thousands of kilometers. Sorry, they're multiple kilometers high. In real life, the tallest building is the Baru
Uh,
Khalifa
Burj
and
Khalifa.
Burj Khalifa. Okay, sure, perfect.
Yeah.
And that is 828 meters, so not even a kilometer up yet. So like we're nowhere near the scale of this. You've tossed 3, 4, 5 of those Burj Khalifas onto one, and we might be talking about one spire of a hive city that has 100,000 spires in it.
And what's crazy too is, if I remember right, 85% of Imperial worlds either have hive cities on them or are hive worlds.
Oh, that's a cool fun fact. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, how much of a percent?
85% of the
Okay.
millions of Imperial worlds out there. So, like, any setting you can think of, I mean, is going to be one of these hive cities.
Okay,
It
because
just
I read a completely different number before, but then again, I can't remember the source and I can't remember how reliable that was. So
I wonder, like, you kind of almost mentioned there, like, there could be all types of different hive cities. Like, we all picture the very classic rockcrete adamantium gothic spire type hive cities. But yeah, there could be all manner. Like, there could be the Coruscant type hive city out there that is relatively okay. I'm going to add it to the end. So kind of get your brainstorm going. And maybe if a call-in guest has a cool kind of concept for a hive city that isn't your stock standard Gothic construct, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I know a couple of examples are, I mean, any hive city probably around Ultramar is not going to be that bad, because you've got Gulliman, who's this master logistic person, and it's going to be probably a lot better structured. But I know I've heard of a hive city on a planet that is so hot that the actual, like, the average person lives in the top spires and the nobility lives in the bottom where it's colder. So it's
Oh,
almost like flipping it.
yeah, yeah. And then, even to take that concept a little further, instead of going into the sky, you go into the earth, you know?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
I did hear
Yeah,
of
or
one
like,
hive. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go.
Oh no, I did hear another story of the hive city belongs or is on a planet that like is frozen, like completely frozen for like 6 to 9 months out of the year. So like the majority of the population just go into cryo sleep for that period of
Oh,
time, and there's only like a skeleton crew of people to make sure like all the main life support systems are running. But other than that, so it's just like you're spending that time in cryo sleep. So it's not like you're spending 16 hours a day serving in the manufactorums and stuff. So like,
hmm.
yeah, you're sleeping, but a lot worse could be happening to you. So
But man, I can imagine the time that you're awake, you're probably toiling endlessly to make up for those
very true.
Yeah. You get to be in quiet cryo sleep, but like your quota is still stacking up every day. So now you gotta fit, 2 years of work into 6 months span because you've been sleeping. Quotas go up. That imperial tithe has to be met. Those resources to the forge worlds have to be met still.
Yeah, if a hive city governor can't meet them, they're gonna bolt round to the head and find the next person that can get those numbers to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, within each hive, vast populations are controlled by the whims of noble houses, minor empires unto themselves, who rule from lofty estates in the upper reaches, occasionally warring with rival hives over resources, powers, and influence. Above the acidic clouds that cloak the hive world's lower levels, their wealth affords them palatial dwellings, gleaming in rare sunlight, while below, acrid smoke casts the city into perpetual gloom. In the spires live the noble houses, the decadent aristocracy, wealthy scions of ancient families, and powerful merchant lords of the manufactorums. These rarefied spaces boast luxuries unimaginable to those in the darkness below, with broad halls, opulent surroundings, and open skies few ever see. Um, sorry, another thing I was reading up on this is that because these people are subject to like such pleasures and niceties, the Inquisition actually has like sleeper agents or hidden people in there just to make sure they don't fall over to chaos, to Slaanesh specifically, because they're used to these pleasures.
Yeah. That makes sense. I wonder too if even on the flip side too, a little bit of that would kind of help prevent chaos. Like, if all the people running your hive, they have it pretty well off, they're not necessarily going to want to flip their hive world and go to chaos. Like, yes, there is Slaanesh where, you're going to feed Slaanesh and the pleasure cult might happen, but also I'm not going to start worshiping Khorne if my life's pretty good. So the better these like noble families are kind of treated at the top, the less likely it is that they're going to lead the whole planet into rebellion. But it's that double-edged sword, for sure, where all of a sudden you start getting too luxurious and too lax in your duties, and then that they would suffer from a different type of chaos infiltration than, let's say, the lowest slums, where the lowest slums, it's like, oh yeah, these guys are prime Nurgle suspects. There's decay and death and disease, and it's like they already have all these plagues and like, release me from my service, where yeah, like every different level has kind of their own temptation that they would fall to, where the gangs, they might fall to Khorne because all they know how to do, all they can do is violence. Yeah.
The whole point of the Darktide game was like a Nurgle infestation in like the lower levels, and then it obviously just spread out to like all the other levels of that particular hive city for that setting. Because someone brought up Darktide earlier, that made me think of that.
Yeah. Well, how do these nobles keep themselves separated from the ruffians living below? The spires are heavily guarded with fortified gates and security forces, ensuring that none but the privileged rise to these heights. Beneath these guarded thresholds sprawls the true heart of the hive city itself. The populations here are so dense, so vast, that they defy any attempt at control or governance. These hivers live on the barest resources, depending on constant imports of food and raw materials from across the Imperium, while recycling what they can to survive within the hive's iron walls. Only the nobility see the sun. For the rest, life is confined to the unending shadow, bound to serve the Imperium with their labor or their lives. Life in the hives is brutal, a ceaseless grind through squalor and decay. Inhabitants struggle daily, breathing air recycled from the lofty spires above and pumping into the lower reaches, growing ever more toxic as it seeps downward. Water, distilled from the upper hive runoff, carries the taint luxury above, while food is churned out in the manufactoriums, often reduced to algae paste or, in the most desperate circumstances, corpse starch. And like for the longest time, I had the biggest misconception on like actually what corpse starch is, but I guess it's you have all these dead bodies, you can't really do anything with them. You don't want to cremate them because, again, it's a resource. So they suck, like they're super processed. They suck all the nutrients, the bionutrients out of these things and turn it into like a gelatinous block almost. That is, I was reading in a book, it was described as just absolutely flavorless. It's like eating unflavored, like dense jello.
Almost like a tofu type thing, eh?
When it is something really dark, this is making me think of the if any of y'all have ever seen Wall-E. Trust me on this.
Cry every time, man. Great movie.
The Axiom, their main product that they were selling was like a giant Slurpee type of icy type of thing.
Yeah, so I remember that.
So shout out to the game theorist Matt Pat if you ever happen to listen to this. But so they came up with the theory that where's the Axiom getting all the resources to create this sludge? It's people. And that explains why the entire population is just getting so overweight, because of the amount of calories that would be in this pseudo corpse starch or this gel. So it's crazy.
I don't like that. I don't know if you ruined that movie or made it better. I gotta watch it again and see. Like,
yes and no.
How I feel while watching it. Yes and no, exactly. Yeah, that is rank.
So a little fun fact too on corpse starch. I have to do some fact checking on this, but I'm pretty sure the other name in 40k for corpse starch is soylent viridian, or soylent green. Don't want to any spoilers or anything, but the movie's been out for a while. But that famous line at the end, "They're people."
God damn. Yeah, I picture. I know I've even made reference to Snowpiercer once already this episode, and once again, don't want to reveal spoilers, but you find out that what they're eating is they're just eating fucking cockroaches that are like ground up into like this brick essentially, and I don't know what's worse, eating bugs or human, but either way, it's fucked.
I mean, there are
Fucking
certain
delicious.
parts
I mean,
there are certain parts of the world that do eat like candied insects or like fried. So, I mean, there's some nutritional value.
Yeah, I hear though bugs. If you eat too much like chitin, there's something in their chitin that is pretty cancerous. So I don't recommend eating bugs too often.
I never knew that. That's really interesting, actually.
I mean, I wouldn't do it anyways because I don't think that quite matches my tastes.
Yeah, no, I got a bunch of chickens in the backyard. Where I get hungry, I just go out there and gank one of those motherfuckers. They still love me. That's the funniest thing about chickens. They don't even know that I've been murdering all their friends and family. They still love me.
Oh, that's grimdark.
It is. Hive City, Paradise Reef. Come on down.
Speaking of
he's
not
slowly
eating... Sorry. Speaking of not eating chitin, from Jax, Tyranids are edible, confirmed.
No, they're cancerous.
Well, pollution and suffocating crowds are but the surface of the Hiver's misery. Gang violence and unchecked anarchy reign in the deeper levels, where law is all but forgotten. Most Hive dwellers know nothing but their own Hive city, never to see the sky or feel the ground of their world. Bound to their manufactorums by duty, they scrape by in the crowded, crime-infested habitats. Those rare few who venture beyond the Hive are often suffer crippling agoraphobia, unaccustomed to open spaces. I mean, you spend your grandparents and your great-grandparents have lived in these tiny little coffin habs, and you step out into the world, and I couldn't even imagine personally.
Yeah, like just the difference of life of just these different parts of the Hive, unfathomable. Like you said, like you would. They're not educated, so they definitely don't know. They're like, I know the upper hives are better. I know that. I've been told that, but I don't know why necessarily. I don't know what good food tastes like. It would be such a weird concept to then get elevated to one of them and having your first taste of like a fresh apple. Whoa, what a trip.
Oh, yeah. You eat these bland blocks your whole life, and then just to have something like that,
Ammo BB says, ruining my fresh plate of cockroaches. Thanks, Marcus. My bad. If you want to eat the bugs, I'm sure they're delicious. Add some barbecue sauce, add some salt. Good to go.
Well, beneath the Hive cities lie the Underhive, a forsaken chaotic realm born of catastrophe. Here, explosions, pollution, power failures, and collapsing tunnels are commonplace. While some damage is patched up, cries for repair or aid are rarely heard, and thus the Underhive grows. This lawless frontier defies the social order of the Hive, inhabited by outcasts, criminals, and the unstable. Whole communities may subsist in the shadowed labyrinth, where life is scarcely recognized by the Hive above. Heavily fortified enclaves serve as the only semblance of order in the Underhive. But even here, survival depends on carrying a weapon. In these parts, the only law is firepower, and to go unarmed is either arrogance or folly. The Underhive is more than a lawless backwater. It's a buffer, separating the Hive city from its very lowest reaches. A drowned wasteland where centuries of waste and pollution have turned the landscape into a toxic quagmire. Here, the only life is that of twisted, monstrous mutants, and rumors abound of sump spawn and plague zombies that terrify Hive children and adults alike. I mean, yeah, you've got the boogeyman. You got your parents telling you about poxwalkers coming for you in the middle of the night.
If you don't work for 16 hours a day, the poxwalkers are going to get you. Yes, Dad.
I actually listened to a pretty good audio drama not too long ago of poxwalkers in the Hive city, and they still had some of their mental faculties, and they would sing, and they would actually draw children from the Hive by like this kind of singing, and the singing would draw you in, and then they'd be contaminated, and it just kept growing.
I don't
Crazy.
like that at all. That's fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mutation is a fact
That's
of life
so
in the
eerie.
Underhive's toxic depths, often ignored by those desperate enough to live here. But fanatic cults like the Redemptionist occasionally descend into crusades, intent on purging these impurities. Many of them are never seen again, disappearing into the shadows of the Underhive, lost to its consuming depths.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you go down there, like there's no way to navigate. There's no way to get around. You might even have a map that you think you're going to use and go down there and find your way around. But like that map's outdated. It's been changed. Everything's been switched around, or like this tunnel has collapsed now. So now it's, or been overrun by toxic sludge or whatever. Like it would just be the craziest maze of all time.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, we were talking earlier about all the potential relics and things the Adeptus Mechanicus, they're searching for these old technologies. Just who knows how much is really down there.
Yeah. Up next, we got, we'll move back up to the very tops of the spires, somewhere a little more wholesome and a little less dank. We're going to talk about some Highborns. Let me just share my screen here for everyone watching the YouTube. Highborn, man, there's some sweet old school art of like the John Blanche style artwork for Highborns. And they just look like, how would you describe like their style? It's almost like British, I picture like a British judge with his weird, pompous, weird wig and robes, and just everything's over the top and grandeur. Yeah.
I mean, that is a great description. Yeah, like royalty, Victorian royalty, and like an old judge.
Yeah. The Highborn, or Nobleborn, are the exalted elite of imperial worlds, reigning as lords, princes, and overseers of sprawling cities, star systems, and even entire planets. With privilege as their birthright, they exist far removed from the relentless toil and hardship of the masses. Their heirs are groomed from infancy for stations of influence, poised to command with the innate authority. Theirs is the finest life offers, or theirs is the finest of life's offerings, be it the scrumptious feasts from the richest lands or the most forbidden luxuries drawn from far-off worlds. But theirs, too, is a world steeped in treacherous intrigue, where rivalries and vendettas are inherited, and enemies linger in the shadow, ready to strike for even a taste of such power. So we got influencers up at the top, I guess. That's fun. Trying to make sure everyone stays in line. Many Highborns live high above the fray, ensconced in lofty spires, castle cities, or palaces that scrape the sky, worlds away from the masses they rule. To be the Highborn, they are the very embodiment of the imperial will, the voice of the emperor himself to those below. The thought of anything upsetting this natural order is heretical, a blasphemy they cannot fathom. They breed apart with noble houses woven across the stars, bound by ancient bloodlines, strategic marriages, and political webs that secure their strength, even when the fortunes of their own world may falter. Shaped by generations of selective breeding and traditions cultivated over centuries, they hold within their veins the legacy of the Imperium itself, heralding themselves as humanity's finest, though the truth may be less splendid. Yeah, these ancient bloodlines, I remember going to my grandparents' house, and they had like a huge family tree on the wall with like 100 different people. And I just imagine these Highborns and like them trying to track out, and this is a bastard born, so we throw them way over here, and these are my firstborn, and just how complex this would be. And then you're tying in all these families, and each one has like the wealth to actually make their own heraldry and stuff. And it would be so kind of crazy just to unravel this 15,000 year legacy, and how far back could you really draw your bloodline would just be so influential.
Yeah, it's incredible. I know like Hive Primus, the governor of that, Lord Helmar, his family's been ruling it for 7,000 years. And to just be able to track that back.
What a joy the emperor must feel when he sees that. Yes, all for me. Yet nobility in blood alone seldom guarantees virtue. For every noble who embodies the ideals of wisdom and leadership, there are countless others whose vanity, indulgence, and pettiness reveal the empty trappings of their high station. In the 41st millennium, as throughout human history, lineage alone is no measure of greatness. Yeah, man. That's some knowledge right there that it just dropped on us.
Mm-hmm.
Among the most dangerous of these privileged are those drawn to heresy and malevolence, not out of necessity, but for the thrill of power, cruelty, or simple boredom. The Inquisition watches such noble closely, for those rogue highborns have the resources, influence, and scarcity to cause untold harm. Indeed, the Ordos often recruit from the nobility itself, understanding that the only highborn can truly counter the treacherous of their own. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think if listening back to the Schola Progenum episode, like from forever ago, that some of the children of these highborn could be taken. The Inquisition comes in, kills the parents, brings them in, indoctrinates them, and sends them back to rule the hive city that their parents once ruled, to get them to be even more loyal to the Imperium.
Yeah. Like there's you just gotta watch these people, because at any moment, like that Slanesh influence, that overindulgence, that excess, it could just take them. So any way you can kind of negate that, or like they're saying, they draw members from the Ordos from these people, just so they know all the ways the Highborn actually operate. They already have that foot in that door to try to unpack all these intricate levels of fucking government that they have stacked on top of each other. Like the administration, the Adeptus administration is crazy, but like these have their own fucking Adeptus administration that's running billions of people below them. And how that all just would stack and build. And man, the more you build the system, the more wobbly it gets, it seems. So,
I mean, it's easy to kind of shoehorn in Slanesh when you have all the excess and the wealth, and I mean that makes a lot of sense. But I also think too, like this is like, you talk about the lower levels with the gangs being like a breeding ground for like corn and Nurgle for sickness, but I also think like Tzeentch may have a big part in like the scheming and the plotting of all the nobles.
Sure.
So
that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think Ammo BB had a comment too. I like to imagine that people who are highborns give up their children to become brazen consuls based off of this description. We're talking about the Ordos chapter. And yep.
Okay.
And which that's I don't believe it's not unheard of.
One sentence teaser. Yeah. Sorry, Gerald.
No, you're good. Yeah. Which that's not unheard of, because I think like some of the stories from like the 30K Emperor's Children and the Blood Angels were all descended from like noble families that gave up their kids, and then the same thing with the Adeptus Custodes as well, were descended from nobles.
Yeah. From their first breath, noble-born children are schooled from the role they must play. Their education encompasses not only history, economics, and the craft of rulership, but also the fine arts of decorum, the subtlest gestures of offense and favor, the preservation of honor, and the mastery of every public and private exchange. And for some, these arts delve darker still, the knowledge of poisons and subtle craft of betrayal and employment of assassins, all skills that, when wielded correctly, secure power as surely as armies. Yeah, one assassin, well-trained assassin, could change the whole direction of a hive city. So, knowing how to spot those guys that need to be assassinated and what to do with them and all that. This would be the crazy schooling system. So everyone underneath, they get their one lesson. It's like the lefty loosey, righty tighty. But everyone, these highborns, they have years and years that they must study. And I would imagine too, with these hiveborns having access to such technology, they are older than most. We could have a highborn that could be hundreds of years old. This kind of technology exists in 40K. So, when that guy, that top highborn eventually dies, you could have the second or the first son in line. He could have been in school for 100 years himself. Now he's ready to take that leadership role, and he's like really at the top of his game. With charm, sharpened by calculation, finely tuned education, and a talent for the court's social maneuvers, these nobles move through the highest tiers of imperial society with grace and cunning. It is no wonder then that many become valued acolytes of the Inquisition, as capable of dismantling threats with charm as they are with force, embodying both refinement and ruthlessness with equal measure. Yeah, and that'd be a thing too, man. Like, you would have to be ruthless in order to be one of these places. Like, I don't think there could be a benevolent Highborn when you're sacrificing millions of souls in the lower depth. Like, there's no real like justice there or like kindness there. There's, this is what has to be done for the sake of the Imperium.
I think you brought this up. Go ahead, Dick.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, these highborn children, they've probably never been to the lower hives or even seen them. So yeah, their understanding would be so detached from everything else.
Yep, and I think, Mark, you brought up a point in like one of your earliest episodes, like because of how vast the Imperium is, because of like just the sheer amount of people in these hive cities, like there's, even with 100 years of schooling, a 400-year lifespan, there's no way one person can truly kind of wrap their mind around like everything that's at stake, everything that goes on into just one hive city of billions. So it's just like it's like you almost have to kind of detach yourself from that, just so you just don't go crazy from all the information.
Yeah, for sure. And you'd have to get very comfortable with those statistics, and maybe there is that number where when you reach a certain threshold of people, it becomes like irrelevant, but yeah, you just have to make those crazy calls where maybe there is a Nurgle plague on the lower depths somewhere, and you decide to cut off that whole part of the city from everyone else, and you just let a million people die, because that's the easiest way to deal with this type of rebellion. Just sacrifice 1 million to deal with 100,000 or whatever those numbers may be. But yeah, you would have to be cold and calculated and ruthless, man. I don't envy that position.
Not at all. I mean, one of my biggest things I wonder too is how much leeway do they get from the Inquisition? Like, if your tithes are being paid constantly, and like the amount of things you can probably get away with is just crazy.
Well, like, that's the thing. Like, they have no reason to check necessarily, as long as you're making your tithe, and it's not like if they do send one of these inquisitorial agents there, they can explore the hive themselves anyways, like they couldn't check under every rock for heresy even if they tried. There's just too many spots. So yeah, I would imagine as long as you meet those tithes, you could get away with a lot of shit before somebody would come looking and then find something.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the catch-22 right there. Is like, the Emperor doesn't care. The Emperor and the High Lords don't care how you run your planet, as long as you're bringing in those people, as long as you're bringing in those munitions, those resources. One slip up though, then they're bringing the Inquisition on you, and that's not a good time.
Yeah, and there is always somebody behind you that can take your spot. So
just that's like, that has its own level of stress right there. So,
yes, I would imagine.
Speaking of stress, let's talk about the life of a Highborn. Highborn exists across nearly every world in the Imperium, from the needle-like spires of hive cities to the rugged forts and stone-hewn halls of feral kingdoms. They are the fortunate elite, rulers not by public consent, but by inherited privilege, their authority bound to them by ancient bloodlines. So that's tale as old as time right there. It's like you're descended from someone famous, ergo, you're a noble.
Wow.
Though the scope of their power varies from planet to planet, their purpose remains unchanged: to lead and wield the political and material resources of their worlds. Most Highborn are raised with a singular focus, trained for governance from a young age, whether by mentors who instill a sense of I can't words tonight. Nobles oblige, or more commonly, by elders who teach them detachment from and disdain for those below them. Many nobles become so consumed by their rarefied lifestyles that they remain oblivious to the true nature of life for the masses, encased within their luxurious fortresses, whether that be in cavern palaces safe from glacial storms, or opulent skyborne sanctuaries adrift among the clouds. For them, the pressing threat is seldom rebellion from below, but rather the ambitions and schemes of other highborn. Which that goes back to the point we made earlier of like, yeah, you may be living a cushier life, but it's still just as much crap as the people down below, but in a different manner. Because then you got other people that are the other billion people behind you that are vying for your spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and even this word ambition, it's been thrown around a lot. Like you'd have to be a pretty ambitious person to be a hiveborn here, and that's another aspect of change. So yeah, it is interesting that these different levels of the hive can really be tied into a chaos god. Somebody needs to tell the Inquisition that this is a thing. I don't know if they know, but like, yeah, check out for this. Like the high levels are gonna be Slaanesh and Chinch, and the lower you go, it could be different things, but very cool. And then you reach like the sumps or whatever, and it's malice and malal, chaos for the sake of chaos. There's just no redeeming that spot down there.
Gee, Mark, you seem to know a lot about these chaos gods in these hive cities. Yes, Mr. Inquisitor, this one right here. This one right here. Seize him. The vastness of the Imperium echoes in the nobility's diversity. For millennia, across innumerable systems, dynasties have emerged, including the rogue trader families, night world nobles, merchant cartels, sector lords, and planetary governors whose influence spans entire star systems. Some noble families trace their lineage across millennia, their domains encompassing interstellar empires, while others are bound to single planets, bound by heritage rather than direct rule. On some worlds, direct control lies with imperial agencies like the Adeptus Ministorum, the Adeptus Mechanicus, where rulers rise not by birthright, but through power struggles within the organization's ranks.
It is interesting to note that, like, yeah, where these different people go, like, it doesn't seem like any of these highborns are like good Astartes candidates, you know? Yeah, maybe they're a Custodes candidate, but that's a very different creation than Astartes. Where, like, yeah, if you're trying to get some Astartes recruit, you're going to the gangs, you know, you're going down lower to the manufactorum worker who's just been mixing concrete by hand for 10 generations, and they're just bicep kings, man, because that's all they've been doing. They're like mutant biceps, all kinda.
Well, like the Imperial Guard, they're taken mostly from the Underhive and these lower levels, and they have like very minimal boot camp style training, because by the time they're taken, they are so used to fighting and the weapons that they're pretty much combat ready at this point. They're given their little primer of Imperial indoctrination. They're handed a flashlight, and they're, you know, go out and fight for the Emperor.
Good to go.
I mean, also,
yeah,
and the star. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like those guys, it's not like you really need to train them necessarily anyways, because you just would probably throw them in dangerous battle zones and they're not going to make it to the next war zone anyways, typically. Yeah. So like, yeah, if they're these like crazy gang members that, like, you know, all tatted up and stuff, who cares? You send them to the dangerous front line, that'll deal with them. And it will be two problems solved at once. You get rid of gang members and you get rid of some Xenos.
Mark, would you join the Guard if given the opportunity, if you spent your whole life living in one of these lower hive levels?
No, I'm not a violent man. I'm a crafty man. I'm not a fan of the violence, to be honest with you. So I think I would try to maneuver in other ways.
Makes sense.
What about you guys? I mean, would you try to line up like, yeah, so you're in the lower hive and all of a sudden you see a poster on the wall, the Imperial Guard wants you. Are you signing up or are you staying where you're at? I think I would stay. I don't think I'd want that type of life.
How about you, Gerald? What would you do?
I did one semester of ROTC in high school, and I realized right then, right there, the military life was not for me. So I'm probably going to pull a Mark and just stay where I'm at.
Yeah. There's just an appeal of freedom, and like, yeah, you're not really free, but also like you could be if you just kind of, at any moment you could leave your manufactorum job and go into the depths and try to make a crazy life for yourself down there, you know? And I think I would rather do that than get shipped somebody else. And now I have this commissar breathing down my neck, telling me to read this fucking Imperial Primer book. And I'm like, I can't read. I was never taught, dude.
Oh, how dare you never read, good sir? That is tantamount to heresy. Here, take a look at this bolter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is hell.
Mm-hmm.
I see. I think I would end up taking the Imperial Guard if that was my only chance to leave like a hive city. And you're never coming back once you're out. You're being shipped off to some distant world. I'd probably take that up.
If you can survive the first, what was it, 15, 16 hours of your
Yeah, something
deployment,
like that.
then yeah. So if you can survive that, you got something going for you. But back to nobles here. Some noble houses rise and fade like brief stars, barely leaving a trace of their existence. Others endure for ages, becoming pillars of their worlds, slowly amassing wealth, placing their descendants in every seat of influence until no corner of society escapes their reach. Over time, these dynasties rise and fall. One generation's triumph may lift a family to the peak of prosperity, while another's reckless actions might cast them into obscurity, leaving them as mere echoes of a once great name.
We got a comment from Ursats here. Yeah, that book 15 hours. And we'll just clarify that 15 hours thing was a very specific battle zone. And that's not the standard across Imperial Guard regiments. It is a fun thing to say, like, oh, guardsmen only live 15 hours. But that was a very specific war zone, just for clarification, because chat's commenting on that.
True.
Yeah,
true.
I think
Well,
I've made that mistake before, believing that Imperial Guard only lived for like 15 hours. But as you pointed out before, you'd have almost no veterans or anything if that was the case. You couldn't supply enough people to make it any longer. Like you'd be having millions of people die so quickly if it was only 15 hours.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was listening to another podcast that was talking about like connections between 40K and real life, as scary as that is. And someone brought up the Battle of Stalingrad from World War II. And just from that battle alone, like the average lifespan of a soldier on either side was probably like 12 to 13 hours. So lower than the quote unquote average expectancy of an Imperial Guardsman.
Oh, so the 40K isn't that grimdark after all. Yay.
The only thing more grimdark than 40K real life
is Russia. Fun.
But I lost my place. To be a highborn means more than simply inheriting power. It is a lifelong duty to safeguard and elevate the house or clan, for power attracts desires like iron to a magnet. Noble families, therefore, engage in relentless struggles for dominance, where victory is earned not in open battle, but in whispers, debts, and veiled threats. In this shadowed war, wealth alone is secondary to the currency of favors and influence. Should a family fall from grace, they find little justice in this world of ruthless ambition. The only recourse is retribution in kind, for here in the murky waters of the nobility, survival is for the sharp-witted and the strong-hearted alone.
Yeah, that's where I'd fall, I think.
Though highborn are born into political and economic power, many discover their station brings only a future of idle indulgence and family feuds. Even in the most influential families, heirs to the true power are few, while many others are left drifting, surrounded by luxury yet without purpose. This idle life leads highborns down diverging paths. Some strive to climb the steep hierarchy within their family, vying in the perilous arena of imperial noble politics, while others seek freedom from familial control, venturing out to carve their own paths. For those who stay, family ties are inescapable. The reputation and influence of their lineage clings to them, making true independence impossible. Even highborn who manage to leave often find themselves ensnared by obligations and debts to their family, their so-called freedom drawn back into the endless currents of family intrigue and power struggles long after they believe themselves free. This makes me think of that quote from The Godfather. Anytime I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you were saying before that some of these children become like acolytes for the Inquisition. I mean, how awesome would that be? You're one of these highborns, but your son or daughter is in the Inquisition. Then you have this extra power behind you.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. A highborn without significant responsibilities may drift through life in decadent leisure or find distractions in the more adventurous corners of their world. Some might be placed within an imperial organization operating in their system, extending the family's reach. Whenever they rise through the ranks or pursue a token career, they can do so without fear of repercussions, assured that their house's political weight protects them from dismissal or dishonor. Many highborn youths are granted commissions in the Astra Militarum or Novus Imperialis. Though some take this as a call to prove themselves, their peers often view them with suspicion, seeing their status as unearned until proven otherwise. Others attempt to break free of their families entirely by volunteering for the Imperial Guard or Navy, seeking roles where they can rely on their own merit through such paths, though such paths are perilous. Among the military's ranks, noble-born officers abound, and the likelihood of encountering someone familiar with their family name can always lingers, a constant reminder of the legacy they can never fully escape.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a good spot. Like, yeah, you know, this Hive City is sending their Imperial tithe and making their guard regiment, and you know, that these lower Hive scum might know what your family is, who the family is, that highborn family, and like, yeah, the bullying that would ensue. Like, where's your family now? You got shit now in the guard trenches. Like, that would be a very dangerous place. I think even more so than like in the Hiveborn. Like dealing with other Hiveborns in the Hive Spire or whatever, you know, when you go out to the guard regiment and yeah, all of a sudden you got these people just like, for generations, your family has fucked mine. And like, oops, he disappeared. There was an orc dagger in his back. Like,
or you never know, after their first battle, they could all be brothers.
Or that.
Or that. I mean, you could also think too, like other highborn officers, what would be the chance that like, I don't know, you run into someone that vaguely knows your family name. You vaguely know their name. You know they're from a more powerful family than yours. So there's a lot of that kind of going on back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you're digging the latrine pits for him.
Mm-hmm. And let's see here. Oh, and rounding this out. In rare cases, some truly sever ties, abandoning their house to become renegades or pirates, often after pilfering their family's wealth. To their kin, worse still are those highborn who forge their own identities as liberators or free agents, living lives that defy the noble expectations they were born into. Their newfound freedom, a mystery and a shame to those left behind.
Yeah, like the Imperium's all about duty. So like if you start shirking that duty, yeah, you could end up bringing a whole lot of shame and consequences upon your family. It's one of those things like, you know, the Inquisition comes to your planet and they're like, so you have 4 sons, one of them fell to chaos, 2 of them just disappeared, and this guy seems to just be this decadent prick. Like, we're not going to let this happen. You don't seem like a good family line here.
Yeah.
So even though they have a lot of freedom, there would be like a lot of responsibility that like, you know, technically everyone in the Imperium is held hostage, and it doesn't matter how high up on the system you are. There are consequences for those around you. So, you know, you fall to chaos and then everyone in your family gets questioned for chaos as well.
It kind of makes me think of like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, or like dystopian fiction like A Handmaid's Tale. Even those people in power, they're still almost like slaves to the system or slaves to the institution. And because even there are certain rules that they have to follow, and the consequences for them and their family is just as bad, if not worse, than the lower born people.
Yeah. Yeah. We can all be very much just products of our environment. And, you know, you don't know what you don't know. So it's, yeah. Fun life.
So I've got a question for you guys, and maybe you'd be able to answer this for me. So you were talking about some of their children severing ties, kind of abandoning the family, becoming pirates. Do any of these highborn children ever become rogue traders?
I would say no, because it's like a very different thing. Like rogue trader families are like some of the first families of the Imperium, essentially, where, you know, to have that, I forget what they call like I think it's called a warrant of trade. I could be wrong on that.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but like that is signed by the Emperor himself. You know, so like those
crazy.
families are completely separate in my mind. And maybe during the Great Crusade, you know, some of these families became the rogue traders and stuff. But I don't think you just can get that status. It's like its whole other highborn legacy.
Yeah, see, my
That
knowledge on rogue traders is not great, so I figured you know it probably a little bit better than I would.
sounds like Lorehammer has to do an episode.
No, that would be a killer episode, absolutely.
Comment from Jax. Warrant of trade is correct. Fact checked by Google.
Google knows. Okay, perfect.
Well, some of the noble houses and Adeptus Ministerium, on many worlds within the Imperium, the power and authority of noble houses are woven closely with the imperial state church, the Adeptus Ministerium. This union traces back to the founding of these worlds, when the families that would one day ascend as nobles brought the imperial creed with them, intertwining their fortunes with their faith. In many traditions, the second-born sons of a noble family is pledged to the Ministerium, trading as a priest or confessor. The ancient pact is intended to strengthen relationships between noble families in the ecclesiarchy, binding them together through their faith and power. One variant of this practice, known as the Chance of Faith, requires young nobles to undertake a religious task at naming age. Such tasks might involve seeking saint dresses likeness in the stone wall, or spending a night in a family tomb to dream of the emperor. If they pass, it is taken as a sign of the emperor's call, and they are sent to the training in the church. Naturally, many youths, aware of the test's significance, intentionally fail in favor of the indulgent life of nobility over a life of austere faith. I mean, yep, in that position, I want to fail, you know?
Yeah.
This would be another good way to kind of fight against some of these like chaos temptations, you know, like if your brother is a priest, he's always going to be nagging in your ear like, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing that too much, you know, maybe we should worship the emperor a little more instead of succumbing to chaos. And it just creates this like a little bit more protection from chaos and the sanity and the power that will corrupt everyone, essentially.
I mean, that was also a pretty common practice too in medieval European families. Like the firstborn, preferably the son, would inherit everything, the lands, the titles, and all of that. But then if like there was a secondborn or a thirdborn, usually they were sent into the church to basically spread the family's influence in matters of faith and things like that. And then also that would in turn go back to them, and they would actually end up inheriting a lot of land or for the church in heavy quotation marks, but you know.
Yeah. Are you saying that the Roman Catholic Church and the ecclesiarchy are slightly similar in their approach and power and control?
I have no comments at this time.
We don't want to have any more issues with the Lorehammer legal.
No, so we don't. I already made a 9/11 joke, and I don't want any problems here.
So on Vestroyan hive cities, so the firstborn sent away to combat, the secondborn is sent to the church. So yeah, you just have to deal with the thirdborn being your heir.
Perfect. The emperor just keeps taking your children from you. But it's okay. The emperor, if it's for the emperor, so it's fine.
For the emperor, of course.
In worlds like Tefine, the bonds between Ministorum and nobility are so strong that siblings often wield both church and state power, blending these roles seamlessly. In other places like Malfi, the duties of nobles and priests are kept sharply distinct, with each domain operating independently but equally vital. Regardless of local customs or the leanings of individual nobles, the influence of the Ministorum remains essential to many noble houses, even as sometimes strained against the church's doctrines. Its presence is an indelible part of the society, an institution they respect or resent, but ultimately rely upon to preserve their social fabric.
The emperor protects unless they die, and of course, that's on them. That's what our stat says. This is kind of cool. Like if you're making your own hive city, even just kind of, how do these hiveborn go or operate? Like where do their children go? Like you're saying, maybe your firstborn goes to like the church because that's what you value the most. And then your secondborn runs the place. Your thirdborn now is going to the imperial tithe. It's kind of cool. A good way to add character. And even like if you're writing characters for like, if you're writing an imperial guard commander, like what was his birth order and why was he chosen where he was sent to go or whatever. Yeah, so it's all not peace and love though. Like you can have all these counters to chaos and counters to calamity, but ultimately there's always going to be people who want to riot, revolt, and cause just chaos, man. Whether they're sick of the lot that they're in or whether they've been influenced by a dark god, there's always going to be some type of problem on the horizon for you to deal with. The saying that any human civilization is 3 missed meals away from anarchy is a timeless adage that echoed with even greater urgency on the Hive worlds. In these colossal crowded cities, millions live shoulder to shoulder, utterly reliant on the sprawling infrastructure that provide them with basic necessities like food, power, light, and clean air. Man, that's a crazy saying. 3 missed meals away from anarchy. Like, because technically that's just one fucking day.
Yeah. I know me. I get hangry. So, yeah, you don't feed me. I'm going to join with the revolt to try and get that food.
All those intermittent fasters are even just one step closer to chaos, you know? I'm 1 missed meal away from fucking up everything.
I mean, the French Revolution was all about, like, the poor the lower classes not having enough money for food. So...
Yeah. If serious unrest or widespread disorder is allowed to fester, the fragile bonds holding the hive steady together can snap, leading to unimaginable suffering. Some believing this is why the notorious Underhive exists on most hive worlds, a place where the city's malice, sin, and discord can be channeled away from the upper echelons, serving as a vent for human strife and hostility. Yeah, it seems like it does. Like it seems like humans need conflict, man. It's just something about us, whether it's like an evolutionary trait of like you need to make conflict so you can get more for yourself or just so you can survive or whatever. It just seems like there's always going to be conflict. So this is kind of a unique workaround where you just can kind of ship people. You got a manufactorum that rebels. Well, you just toss them down into the Underhive and like whatever, fuck them. There you go.
But they're just mad because where's my corpse starch? Thanks, Jax.
It was all about cake, actually, or the lack thereof, for the French. I've seen what is that fucking movie with Kirsten Dunst? I've seen it before. Despite unyielding vigilance and near totalitarian oversight, catastrophic unrest does break out, even in the most tightly controlled hives. The colossal sector, for instance, is littered with riots littered with tales of such calamity. Fink's world, infamous turbulent food tax riots nearly doubled the population of the hive vlog within a single year, until natural attrition reduced the numbers once again in the following months. In Malfi, the 2-decade misrule of House Koba led to the period of civil strife that led nearly 1 billion dead and obliterated one of the sector's mightiest noble houses. Even the mighty hive Sibelius on Scintilia, the capital of the colossal sector, has proven vulnerable to disorder. When local law enforcement, the Magisterium, overstepped during what became known as the Reinhold blackouts, open conflict erupted between the Magistratum and the criminal gangs of the hive. What started in the slums and lawless zones quickly spread, disrupting major infrastructure. Power outages ravaged dozens of middle hive districts for days. Anarchy gripped the cities and tens of thousands perished as entire regions were consumed by fires. Many areas left devastated by blackouts now lie in ruin, slowly decaying in the Underhive, becoming a desolate haunt of society's outcasts. In the aftermath, the Sibelius Magistratum, tarnished by failure, has become ever more ruthless in maintaining control, enforcing their rule with an iron fist to prevent other descending into chaos. Yeah, it's crazy, this kind of thought of infrastructure attacks and like how everything would have to work so smoothly for this hive to operate. And if you take away one kind of level of food production, everything above gets messed. Or I just was talking about, like at the beginning, these massive adamantium and rockcrete columns that must be built at the center of the spires that, you know, the spires then attached to. Just imagine if you sabotage the base of that, how much chaos, you topple that, the whole fucking spire over. You could get up to some serious chaos real quick.
I have a question for you, Mark. The we may have mentioned this whole episode of the different sections or sectors of just the one hive city can collapse in on itself and bury what remains. Like, what are the like? I wonder if, and it's probably different from every hive city, but I wonder if there's like a not like a hard and fast rule of like, okay, now we're in the lower city, now we're in the under city. Like, I imagine them. How often do you think those lines can shift? Like, as each layer is built, like at what point do you consider, okay, now this is the lower part of the city, or now this is the undercity, or oh wait, this sector collapsed. Okay, we're gonna make this open section the undercity now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting thought of where those lines are actually drawn. And even like, yeah, the Underhive are always trying to like, take more territory and take the towers above and stuff. And I would imagine those lines are constantly shifting. And even the Highborn towers, like, yeah, let's one Highborn family is like, okay, let's build our tower even taller now. All the towers have been equal, but all of a sudden these guys built their tower even taller. And now they're the Highborn of the Highborn, and everyone else kind of just reshuffles this whole pyramid structure down.
Yeah,
Nick?
I'm sure in the lower levels, like the difference between them can sometimes blend. But I believe like in the upper hive and then the spires, there's like actual fortifications to stop the lower people from coming up. Like each person's designated their specific areas that they can venture. If I remember right, too, there's actually it's called the Guild of Coins, and they don't track money. If I remember right, they kind of control the transit between the different levels, so they'll let like cargo go to some of the upper levels, and they're kind of like the gatekeepers or the highwaymen of some of these hive cities.
Yeah, and what a powerful figure that would be to be able to control the resources going up and down the hive and stuff. And all of a sudden, you're like, you pissed off that one. What'd you call the guild? The Guild of Coin. You pissed them off, and all of a sudden they ship up a bunch of hive gangers to the upper spire. Oops, wrong elevator. Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
But yeah, the amount of guilds in hive cities, that deserves an episode by itself. There's just so many different things that control, like the guilds that control the just since there's not like coin and economy in a way, they keep track of like the cargo and the merchant going in and out of the hive cities, because they require so much import export that you need someone to be the middleman for that and keep track of all of it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Any other thoughts on kind of just the revolts? Like, there would be so many different levels of revolts happening. You got the constant hive or the constant chaos of the underhive, but then also you got like what we're kind of talking about. You piss off that one guild guy, and now all of a sudden he's not sending food up, and now your middle class are revolting, or now your Highborn no longer have anything, and now they're revolting, or just all that. Like there's so much chaos that could happen with just one misplaced shipment somewhere.
Kind of like what Grimaldus is pointing out in one of the comments here. There's definitely some backdoor deals being done.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I have a thought experiment for you two. Well, a quick question: What do you think would it take? Say you're just a normal resident in one of these hive cities. What would it take for either of you to want to actually join up in a revolt or to start up a revolt?
A lot. Like I said earlier, I'm not a violent person. I'll gank a chicken for a meal, but I think I like to work either outside of the system or work around the system, or take advantage of the system more so than destroy the system. I feel like whenever you try to destroy a system, you don't know what system's going to come up next, and that uncertainty and that kind of that's not for me, man. I'd rather work within the rules around me. We're all born into this world where we have to abide by the rules of gravity. So I guess I shouldn't be jumping off cliffs.
Okay. I'll amend the question then. Say a riot or revolt does break out, what side do you think you would fall on, or would you just try your best to kind of stay out of it and keep your head down?
Yeah, definitely keep my head down. Like, I live on an island by myself with my wife and kid. Like, There's no one around. I would rather just be left alone, let people do their chaos, and just be like, I got my little own corpse starch farm going on here. I'm fine. Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
What about you, Nick?
I'm telling you, all I gotta do is miss 3 meals. If that
Oh,
fourth meal
goddamn.
doesn't come, if
Oh,
that fourth
goddamn.
meal doesn't come, then yeah, I'm joining that revolt.
As your
It's-
current employer, I find that deeply disturbing. I just don't feed Nick for one day and he fucking revolts and blows up Lorehammer. Starts.
Oh yeah, it's gonna
Then,
happen.
Perfect.
then, then hope he's just one of those intermittent fasters that only has like 2 meals or 1 meal per day.
Okay, I can
mean,
manage that.
I've got 2 young children to look for. If I don't have food coming in, they're going to be my number one priority. I'm going with the side that's going to feed me.
Okay, Mark. So that's 9 meals you got to provide for. So the
Yeah,
onus
so
is on
join
you.
the Patreon. Please join the Patreon. I already have rumorings of uprisings happening. Support the show so Nick doesn't eat me.
A couple of the comments regarding the question is one from Ammo. Hard to say when things come down to partaking in revolt when you have to have some ideal that things would change for the better. So the only case would be to ascend. And then following that with Grimaldus would be work with the devil you know, or better the devil you know.
Yeah, deal with the devil. Yeah, lots of, that's what you're doing. You're not being productive when you start destroying and smashing stuff. I think there's just better ways to do things. I don't want to get involved in that, But,
Yeah, understandable.
But
I mean,
like you said, man, when you have a family and you got kids to feed, all of a sudden you're put in some rough positions of what are you going to do? You're looking at your kid and they're starving, and all of a sudden you're like, it's a different fucking question that is asked,
absolutely. Where do you think Eric went?
the last one who rose up against me, I killed him and fled to Panama. And the last one before that, I locked him in my parents' basement. So I don't know what happened to him. He's still in there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I hope my parents are feeding him. Otherwise, 3 meals away from him breaking out of the basement and eating my parents. Fuck.
Oh no. Well, I guess we have to have some kind of law and order to manage these revolts. So why don't we talk about the Adeptus Arbites? AKA Judge Dredd. The Adeptus Arbites are the Imperium's enforcers of law and order, a powerful and feared organization that answers directly to the High Lords of Terra. Unlike local planetary law enforcement, the Arbites upholds the Emperor's law across all Imperial worlds, tasked with enforcing edicts, suppressing dissent, and punishing acts of treason or heresy that threaten Imperial stability. They are unyielding agents of Imperial justice, loyal to the throne above any planetary ruler, and are empowered to take drastic measures to maintain the Imperium's absolute authority. Their jurisdiction extends across the Imperium, focusing on matters that jeopardize the Emperor's governance rather than local crime, giving them a fearsome reputation for brutality and unwavering dedication.
Yeah, like these law enforcement officers, they don't care if you're doing some minor stealing. They're worried about are the Highborns meeting their tithe, or is there a rebellion happening that could disrupt the output of this hive world? Because then that's an issue for the Imperium. They are such high level crimes, but when they do get involved, it becomes fucking serious. I would imagine like every hive has their own built-in type of justice system and whatever, and then you have this stacked on top. I know for I think it's Necromunda, they have the Palatine Enforcers, which are kind of their own version of cops, and they would be more in charge of doing like petty crime or whatever type of thing like that, dealing with gang warfare, where the Adeptus Arbites are definitely that large scale, or this is a crime against the throne. This is a crime against the Emperor himself, not just against your neighbor.
On Hive worlds, the Arbites' work is both relentless and perilous, as Hive cities are breeding grounds for organized crime, dangerous cults, and massive gang networks. The Arbites are often engaged in brutal campaigns to root out and crush these gangs, whose power and influence can spread throughout the entire Hive levels, threatening Imperial law and order. The Arbites' presence within the Hive cities is a tense one, as they not only must combat the gangs directly, but also contend with the Hive's ruling elite, some of whom may covertly support or benefit from criminal enterprises. The Arbites act decisively, launching purges into the Underhive and deploying specialized squads to hunt down criminal leaders and quash rebellion, aiming to deter even the smallest spark of dissent that could cascade into a hive-wide anarchy. I wonder how often they have to get into like a jurisdiction war over between themselves and like the own planetary judicial system. Like,
I don't think there's any conflict between the two. I think, the Arbites come in and they're like, oh, so you're a heretic too now if you disagree. Like, there wouldn't be much negotiation with them. They're like, oh, you're human trafficking? That's the Emperor's people, you son of a bitch. We're the human traffickers, not you. I don't think there's much conflict. Now, I wonder how much they would use local law enforcement and stuff, or if that would be the interesting question, how much they would actually incorporate the local law enforcement into helping them, as opposed to, we're just going to deal with this ourselves. This is high level. We're not even getting you guys involved.
That's the kind of question I was wondering, was just like, at what point does it shift from, is it just a local law enforcement thing, or like this is bad enough to where the Arbites need to step in, like just general gang violence and murder? Nah, let the plebs deal with that. Oh, there's some heresy. Oh, there's some heresy. Oh, wait, the planet's tithe is being affected. Okay, now we're stepping in. I am the law.
Like we said at the beginning of the episode, we're kind of on this 3, maybe 4 episode story arc where we're talking hive cities, and then we're going to talk gangs, and then we're going to talk Arbites. And yeah, I know there are a list of rules and regulations, but I don't want to get too much into them because it's a full big episode that we can do about them. Any other thoughts? So maybe Nick, you have a quick thought about this kind of question of what do you think is maybe if you were the lead Arbites in a courthouse on a planet, what crime do you think you would be looking out for that would be the most kind of on your radar?
Personally, I mean, the biggest resource in 40K for the Imperium is humanity. So anything to affect that, I mean, major rebellions, anything that you're going to lose a substantial amount of life, that's going to take extra time, where you might not be able to meet your imperial tithe, anything like that, I think is going to probably be your number one concern.
It's such a weird dichotomy where it's the most precious thing in the Imperium is life, but it's also the most frivolously spent,
Oh, absolutely.
Is that weird? Yeah.
I mean, if you kind of match up the other Xenos races that you have in the setting, I mean, you've got at the far end of the spectrum the Tyranids and the Orcs that just they're just an endless wave, to the far side where it's like the Eldar, that are trying everything they can to survive. I'd say humanity falls perfectly in the middle to where they can just throw out these vast numbers, but they still have to protect humanity as a whole.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that on a scale how evil everything is. The Imperium is always just perfectly in the middle of they throw away lives, but they're also somewhat care about your life, even if it's just for because you're just another cog in the machine. The machine needs to keep going.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyways, one more thing about the Arbites. The tactics employed by the Adeptus Arbites are as calculated as they are ruthless. They rely on overwhelming force, advanced surveillance, and a strict adherence to protocol. Arbites patrols are heavily armed, and their standard equipment includes shock mauls, suppression shields, and heavy carapace armor, allowing them to maintain an imposing presence even in the darkest hive levels. They frequently employ precinct fortresses, heavily fortified outposts from which they launch raids, conduct interrogations, and store their war gear. Arbites operations often involve systematic sweeps, sealing off hive levels, and conducting door-to-door purges to locate and eliminate criminal elements. Their investigative methods are as thorough as their combat training, using advanced scanners and servo skulls and sanctioned psychers to aid in surveillance and interrogation, ensuring that no crime against the Imperium goes unpunished. Though these tactics Through these tactics, the Arbites cement themselves as the ever-watchful guardians of the Emperor's law in the most lawless regions of the Imperium.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be such a fun episode. Like, what really are those imperial laws, do's and don'ts of the Imperium? Because across a million worlds, with everyone so vastly different, how do you maintain any type of unity or conformity or law? So I'm really excited for that episode for sure.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah, I know this will be covered in a later episode, but I think one of like the meme points of the Arbites is they have a condensed version of like the Emperor's Law that they have to carry around them at all times, and even that's like 1,000 pages long. So
Oh God, hit him with the book! Fucking kills the guy. It's a fucking big book. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of that little portion of it. We'll jump into like known hive cities. We've mentioned a few for sure, but let's start off with the biggest, the baddest, most well-known hive city of them all, the seat of the throne of the emperor himself, Holy Terra. We'll start with a brief little history. Like, Terra is so big, we could do a whole episode on Terra. Not that I plan on doing that anytime soon, but I'll give you some of the highlights of this wonderful, wholesome place. Imperial Terra, often simply referred to as Terra, is the birthplace of humanity's greatest empire, the Imperium of Man. Once a vibrant and diverse planet, it became the capital of human civilization during the Age of the Imperium, thanks to the unification efforts led by the Emperor of Mankind. Over millennia, Terra was transformed into a sprawling hive city, characterized by its colossal structures and dense urbanization, where the remnants of humanity's once great cultures and societies melded into a single, powerful entity. Key historical events such as the Horus Heresy and the subsequent Great Crusade have left the inedible marks on the cityscapes. Indelible. Sorry, not inedible. They're not eating the cityscape. Words are fun. And its population, shaping Terra's role as the sacred heart of the Imperium and the focal point of it for religious devotion. It's interesting, like, you know, Terra, we all know Terra's Earth, and just how over the centuries, over the millennia, it just becomes this one unified, massive hive where everyone is on the same page, essentially. Everyone, there is no unique cultures, even like across the planet. Like, it's kind of just one entity. Its culture is the Adeptus administration. That's its culture. Paperwork.
I mean, people go on pilgrimages to Terra to walk on the surface of this planet, but are they really walking on the surface of the planet if there's no real planet left?
Yeah, for real. Yeah. I wonder what, like, you know, we talk about hive worlds and all this waste that they produce and stuff, and like Terra doesn't seem to be at that same level of filth and decay. And yeah, I wonder if that's just their proximity to Mechanicus. That's just the amount of resources they can actually shoot their filth off into space and dispose of it. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's no way that there's people are touching soil anymore. There's no forests left.
Like one of the big sticking points of Terra in the 41st millennium was like everything that we would need for survival has to be imported from other agri worlds, from other hive worlds, from basically all around, because Terra cannot produce any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Geography and locations. The geography of Imperial Terra is dominated by vast expanse of hive cities, colossal constructs that tower into the clouds. Among these, most prominent is the Imperial Palace, a monumental fortress that serves as a residence of the Emperor and the administrative heart of the Imperium. Surrounding the palace are various districts, including the Administratum, where the vast bureaucratic machine of the Imperium operates, and the ecclesiarchal districts, where the housing of towering cathedrals dedicated to the worship of the Emperor. The Underhive and the dark, treacherous labyrinth beneath the surface serves as a haven for the downtrodden, criminals, and those seeking to escape the watchful eyes of the Arbites. Additionally, remnants of the old world, ruins from humanity's ancient past, can still be found, standing as a testament of a time before the Great Fall. There's other cool spots too, like the Navis Noblite, or the people who are in charge of warp travel and stuff like that. Those man, I'm blanking. They're not astropaths, they're navigators. That's what I'm thinking. The
Yeah,
great
yeah,
navigator houses are also located on Terra and stuff, and that's a whole nother element in political intrigue that happens there. It's just the craziest place, man. But of course, the greatest output or the greatest thing that, once again, human has is the humans that they produce. So the production and output. The production capacities of Imperial Terra are nothing short of monumental. As the administrative and spiritual center of the Imperium, it is responsible for producing the vast quantities of material, goods, and resources and advanced technology necessary for the war efforts of the Imperial forces. Massive manufactorums churn out weapons, vehicle, and machinery that sustain Imperial Guard, the Adeptus Astartes, and various Imperial institutions. Moreover, Terra serves as a center for scholarly pursuits, housing vast libraries and research facilities where the knowledge of the past is preserved and expanded upon. While the Hive City faces constant challenges from overcrowding, pollution, and social unrest, its relentless output remains vital for the survival and expansion of humanity in the grim darkness of the far future. Like, even all the Space Marine chapters originally hailed from there. You know, how many different regiments hail from there? The Lucifer Blacks, or whatever else may have come from there. This is the capital of the Imperium. Best of the best. Best place to be.
Probably one of the most ruthless places to be too. Everyone's probably so cutthroat. Like, you have those issue with the Highborns just in the Hive City. Imagine like a whole planet of that.
Yeah. And then to deal with that, instead of the Arbites, you have the Custodes, and they're like, there is no rebellion this close to the Emperor's palace. Like, that's not allowed to happen.
Ziller cult.
Jeez, yeah.
on Terra, man, I cannot even imagine.
Yeah. You guys chose a Hive City that you thought was interesting. If you want to learn more, go listen to podcasts or just go read yourself, like Wikipedia, Lexicon, whatever. They have a whole list of fucking Hive worlds to choose from that you can just kind of learn from and get your creative juices flowing. So, Gerald, you chose Hell's Reach. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I did. For the uninitiated, that's Hell's Reach is the namesake of the both the novel and the movie about our very famous Black Templar chaplain, who is also commenting on our live stream, Grimaldus.
Grimaldus. Well, thank you for joining our live stream. That's nice of him.
But so just a little known, just some fun facts about Hell's Reach. There isn't too much to it from the Lexicanum article. It is on the planet of Armageddon, which also for the uninitiated was a orc planet called Ulanor back in its history. I'll read about the founding here. The settlement that would eventually become Hell's Reach was the first and oldest settlement established by the original Imperial settlers of Armageddon. The settlers' achievement was immortalized in the form of the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant. The temple would eventually become a host of a sanctum of the Order of the Argent Shroud, who maintained a number of relics carried by the settlers. And then from there, the Hive City was a major focal point for the wars for Armageddon, of which there were 3. The first war was conducted by the Space Wolves, the Imperial Guard, and there were some Chaos forces involved. And then there were some Grey Knights that were actually teleported directly into the combat against Angron, if you can believe that.
Yeah. Like the very first war for Armageddon is so different than the other two, where the first one is a war against Chaos and Khorne specifically, where the other two are against Skazkul and Orcs. That first war is crazy, though. The Grey Knights, they had a bunch of veterans or whatever, and they're like, we don't have enough suits of Terminator armor to deal with this type of invasion. So they ended up pulling Terminator armor from a bunch of different chapters, and I forget how many they were able to acquire, but they came up with like this huge Terminator force to be able to deal with Angron. Pretty cool. And then everyone who survived that war was mind wiped. Pretty cool as well.
Basically.
Yeah, with a bolt around.
The
mind has been wiped thoroughly with that boulder round. Fuck.
Indeed.
We got comments saying about Hell's Reach. I will die on this planet. I will die on Hell's Reach. That's a quote from Grimaldus. Man, that fucking movie was fucking killer. 10 out of 10. So good.
That was a very good movie. And, well, here's a quote from Grimaldus himself. I have dug my grave in this planet. I will either triumph or I will die.
Yeah. And even if you triumph, eventually you will die. So isn't that just the way it goes on any type of place in the Imperium?
Mm-hmm.
Just another body for the corpse god.
Basically. Skulls for the golden throne, blood for the emperor. Wait a second.
Wait a minute.
Wait a second. And then as far as Hell's Reaches have the second and the third wars for Armageddon, which are basically the orcs, Gazkul, Yarick, and obviously our very dear Grimaldus take part. And then everything just kind of dies down after that. So
yeah. But like of all the imperial planets, like this one gets fucked, and it's home of the biggest battle, some of the biggest battles in all of 40k, and it happens again and again. And then you're like, well, why'd you name this place so shitty? Like Hell's Reach. Do you think you're attracting a certain type of attention, perhaps, or what?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is part of like a cluster, and the other hive cities in that area. It also includes Hades Hive.
You're attracting a particular type of attention when you name things like this.
Pretty much.
Cool.
So,
you got anything else about Hell's Reach you want to share with us?
No, just to highlight a very, very famous one, and also was the movie that gave me a soft spot for the Black Templars. So
yeah, and that once again, that movie is just called Hell's Reach, and you can find it on YouTube. And seriously, go watch it. It's great. You see so much cool stuff from warlord titans battling amongst the spires of the Hive city that have been like collapsed. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, go watch that, man.
Oh, it's great. I do have I lied. I do have one more point to make, and this was something that Grimaldus himself actually brought up in the movie, because he was the one that was sent by the High Marshal to basically ready up all the planetary, all the forces, the Guard, the PDF, tried to wrangle up the Mechanicus and the Titan legions. And then there was one scene where he was basically going over like all the logistics of one Hive city, and he has to figure out how to maintain all the resources, all the people involved, all the soldiers, everything for 9 days. And then he's just saying, this is 9 days of hell.
Yeah, jeez.
Oh, man,
he's like, this is
imagine.
The worst thing he's had to do. He's like, I've lost limbs, but this is the worst, man. Yeah. Before we throw it off to you, Nick, and your planet of Necromunda, your Hive city of Necromunda, I'm just going to say we're nearing the end of this episode. So if you want to get in on a call-in, I'm going to post an invite link in the chat, and we have some final thoughts and talking points that you could get involved in. We got a bunch to go through, and it would be cool to get some other people's perspectives. So I'm going to toss that in there. You can just click on it, and we'll get you on the show. So Nick, tell us about Necromunda.
Yeah, so I know I've brought it up several times throughout this episode, but yeah, the cluster, the Hive world of Necromunda, is probably one of my most favorite, just because it is like so grimdark. In one of the books, they mentioned that in the 37th millennium, they tried to do a census on Hive Trozier and they were only able to do the upper spires, and it reached into the billions. And they deduced that the entire Hive city itself had more people on it than had ever been born and died in all of Terra up to the second millennium. So I think in like our history, 130 billion people have lived and died in all of human history, and
that's a fun number to know.
One city. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's nice. Crazy. It really makes you feel like you're a part of something bigger.
Yeah, they're the Hive cities there are one of the most proliferant users of corpse starch, just because they need it to be able to feed their populations.
Nice. Well,
yeah.
Good thing they got that dead body pile in the back there to use.
Oh god,
they're eating good. They get their 4 square meals a day of corpse starch. Good for them.
I know the Imperial. Yeah. I mean, what, 2 more missed meals after that first, and you got a rebellion on your hand.
Yep.
But I know the Imperial Fist, they keep a permanent keep on, I think it's Hive Primus, the main Hive city in Necromunda, because they recruit so heavily for their neophytes from the lower Hive just because of how dangerous it is.
Yeah, crazy.
Fantastic.
Any
question
other
for
little
Mark.
details you want? Yeah.
Quick
Go
question
for
for
it.
Mark also about Terra, because Nick's comment about the Imperial Fist. Well, aren't they also one of the only Space Marine chapters that were allowed to recruit from Terra, along with
Yeah, like
Necromunda?
nowadays. Yeah, for sure. Nowadays, that's the case. But like, I wonder how many people actually come from the Imperial Fists on Terra. Like, I think that's almost more like an honorific type thing because they have their own homeworld. They got their fortress monastery, the Phalanx or whatever, that's flying around the galaxy, probably recruiting from wherever they can. That would be an interesting question to try to figure out, like how many of the Imperial Fists are really actually Terran born, even like in 40K and not 30K. I don't think it's a very high number, but it could be. Could be. They definitely have the right to do it. One of the only chapter that does have the right, but yeah. Any other thoughts on Necromunda before we get to our kind of closing conversation piece, and we'll get a call-in guest? Or
Not that I can think of. I mean, I think I brought it up mostly. There's just so many things that come from that Hive cluster that you could honestly make a whole episode of it just by itself. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Like, and even all the different gangs that we know of, like House Escher or the Goliath gang, or all those different gangs. That's where they come from.
I
That's
know we brought it up
vibe.
briefly. The Redemptionists, this cult that believe, like, the Emperor's divine law, that if you're a Xenos or a witch, a psyker, that's like the ultimate sin, and they're just going and trying to wipe out all of it.
Fun.
Yeah, right.
I wonder. That makes me wonder. With the Arbites, like some of them use sanctioned psychers, but then I don't know. That almost seems kind of hypocritical. Which I get, that's the whole point of the Imperium, anyways. But it's like some are using sanctioned psychers, but then you're going in to purge psychers. So where do you draw the line of, hey, you might be useful, you're going to work for us? Oh, you're a psyker, you're a witch, burn the witch,
Yeah, you take that Grey Knight approach. At the end of the battle, they're all getting fucking killed, mind wiped at the end.
Oh, speaking of Grey Knights, we have a comment from Ammo about the First War of Armageddon. 13 Grey Knights, according to the wiki, survived out of the 109 deployed.
Cool. Yeah, that's not a good ratio, but good for them. They still won the war.
In their defense, it was Demon Angron. So,
yeah.
And if I remember anything from the Arcs of Omen, his part of the Arcs of Omen storyline, he also decimated a bunch of Grey Knights. So,
yeah, that'll happen. Cool. Let's get a call-in guest here, and you can partake in our final thoughts. And we have a bunch of random questions that we'll just kind of brainstorm through. Let's add Ursats to the stage. Hey, welcome to the show, buddy. I just unmuted you. Sorry if I missed you there. Welcome to the show, Ursats.
Okay, there we go. I was muted as well. Double mutation. There we go.
Double mute. No, you're a mutant.
Push the mutant.
All right. You've been on the show before. We've talked many times, so I won't give you too much. We'll just jump into these questions, and you can join in as you feel.
Okay.
Genetic lineage. How do Hive City inhabitants' genetics change over generations? Are some mutations tolerated due to the limited genetic diversity, or is it purity strictly enforced? Let's go around the group, maybe starting with Nick. How do you feel about this?
What in the lower and under hives, yeah, mutation is going to be a thing. I don't think with that amount of people, there's no way to necessarily strictly enforce it. But you need the people. It's just going to happen. Are you really going to sacrifice like a whole chunk of your population because they might have like an extra appendage, like a digit or something? Sure. I mean, the range of mutations is endless, really. But I could see as you're getting into the upper hive and even the spires, like absolutely not. Like they're not going to allow any of that.
Yeah. Ursats, what are your thoughts on that question?
Well, I think Nick's right, but I do think, like I've read myself, that there's quite a lot of inbreeding within the higher ups of society. So I feel like that would lead to a bit of, maybe not like extra limbs or stuff, but a bit of a weird looking person or that kind of thing. Especially with the Navis nobility, there's a huge amount of it going on. Like so much so that they lock them in rooms within the ship so people can't see it.
I'm not a scientist, and this is maybe an interesting question. Like, are products of inbreeding considered mutants, or like are those kind of very different genetically?
I think they'd be different genetically. That's a good question because honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, like to me, a mutant is somebody born with like 6 fingers for some fucking reason. Like his genome mutated, where like inbreeding is like a little different in my mind than mutant status. But
the issue with that comes from like that also comes with its own really bad problems, such as like your mental. A lot of times, your mental faculties are not going to be there. Or you're highly susceptible to certain diseases and certain conditions that you otherwise wouldn't have those protections against. Like if you were from a non-inbred family, I do not know how to phrase this.
Yeah, we're walking on some dangerous subject. Do we want to move to the next question? Would that make us feel Lorehammer Legal does not need to get involved? Don't worry, we got this. It's fine. Moving on. What's our next question?
Our next question is about the ecology of the Underhive. What unique ecosystems have developed in the Underhive? Are there rare species of flora and fauna that have adapted to the harsh conditions?
Let's throw this to just Ursats again. You got anything to say about this?
Well, as a keeper of many an animal, I feel like I'd say that maybe they started off as just a normal species and then that evolved to, combat things. Maybe they can plug themselves in. Maybe they've grown longer limbs. I feel like you'd find an abundance of them, or there was an abundance until people used them to eat, like as food or, sports or something.
You kind of said plugged in, and maybe this isn't what you mean, but when I hear that, I think of like plugged in technologically, and that's a weird thought when it comes to like a rare species of flora or fauna. But then I do think of the Necromunda side model thing called the sub pump croc, and that thing looks like it has a bunch of technology on it. What are your thoughts on kind of that? Like, are they merging weird technology like that? Is it all just mutated or?
Oh, funny you say that because I actually have that model in hand right now, so I can tell you. It looks like it's just grafted, really.
Yeah.
But I could see that, like maybe they evolved to form some kind of. I mean, it's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, depending on the planet. So I guess they have time to adapt to that. Or even it might not be an electrical adaptation; it could be more of a natural thing. Like Eldar with their whole bone manipulation and that kind of thing.
That's an interesting thought, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you have a million worlds and the amount of hive cities that are out there, the possibilities are just endless. And yeah, I could absolutely see something like that happening.
Yeah. Let's jump to the next question.
Yeah, so how do traditions, relics, and beliefs evolve uniquely in each hive city? Do you think that based on their like geographical location in the galaxy, the different sort of people living there, it's kind of, or even like the Adeptus Mechanicus, the different relics and stuff that have been lost over time. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I'll answer this one. I think environment has a huge factor on how people operate. So, traditions can be based around environmental factors. Like, do we do things at night or daytime because it's warm at night and we can actually do stuff, or whatever kind of weird kind of environmental factors might happen. On a planet of pitch darkness, anyone with a flashlight, are they some type of like star god, or like the illuminated? You can really kind of, depending on the environmental factors, I think really would change the culture of it. What other thoughts do we have here? Throw it to somebody else in the panel.
I was gonna say, like, the more people don't know about things, the more things develop into a religion. Just like, the Adeptus Mechanicus with their whole understanding on electronics and that kind of thing is becoming a religion. So it could be the same, like, people filter down from the top. Like, oh, I saw this thing at the top. It was a big gold ball that was magnetic, but they don't know that. And as it gets down the society to the bottom, they're like, oh, it was a magical orb that could control blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a great point. Just kind of that like ignorance and no education, and all of a sudden, simple things to us become magical to them. Cool.
Flat Earth.
Any other
is on
thoughts?
steroids.
Yeah, exactly. They can't comprehend that it's round because they just have never even seen outside a window before. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on this one?
I know there's some hive cities that are called like shrine worlds. If I'm remembering right, that are purely devoted just to like worship and prayer.
Yeah. That's kind of a fun one too. Like, if humans have this effect on the warp, maybe you set up hive worlds that are dedicated to just praying, and then that kind of creates this like safety bubble of protection for the subsector or the sector, or however big of a scope it creates. It's almost like one of my takes of, if you put a blank everywhere in every square mile in the galaxy, you can get rid of the warp. But in this case, it's like, let's get a bunch of worshippers, and maybe that will kind of keep this spot safe.
Sure.
Cool. We'll jump to the next question. Maybe I'll kick Ursats here, and we'll get the other guest on. Ursats, do you have any other thoughts about this episode in general, or before we kick you out?
I don't know if you know about it's called Trigun. It's an anime, and they're like a society that's moved into the stars, and they've just started building out from their original starship. So that's like a cool little image of, I feel like what you said at the beginning, like that some of the cities are made from starships, and you get a really good feel of that with that show.
That kind of just spawned a whole thought of like somebody strapping engines onto their fucking hive city and blasting that off into space, and now like that's the unique hive world. It's this like space-bound hive city, bigger than the colossal Imperial ships that they already have, bigger than the phalanx, bigger than anything else we can possibly imagine. Fucking
just
wild.
Like
okay,
a big space Hulk just city.
Exactly like a space Hulk, but like not Chaos running Gene Stealer infest.
Right.
But very cool.
Well, you never know, there might be some Gene Stealers on that space Hulk hive city thing. So
cool. Well, Ursats, thanks for joining the show.
No worries, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll add another guy here. It says James, and I'm curious who this James is going to be. You are added.
Hey, how's it going?
It says I can't unmute you. Okay, you can talk. Perfect. Hey, it's going good. How are you?
Not bad. Also, this is Jax.
Welcome,
Hey,
Jax.
Jax.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
All right, well, we'll include you in on some of these questions here. The next one we got is slave markets and forced labor. How do some hive cities handle?
Gosh.
Tell us about your thoughts on slaves, Jax. Tell us all
no.
about it. Is slavery good? No, just kidding. So how do they handle labor shortages? Is there an active black market or an underground slave trade? Like, what do you pay a forced laborer who has to work 16 hours a day? Are they just operating off of the corpse starch that you feed them? We'll give it to you right away, Jax. What are your thoughts?
Well, what a heavy question, but absolutely, yeah, there is sort of going to be a black market. Like, it's 40K, like, of course. It is probably going to differ from planet to planet. Like, McCrag will probably have like $20 an hour work. Where it's like if you
That's nice.
played the Rogue Trader game, if you play the Rogue Trader game, you'll see like these places where it's like people are getting paid in decaf, and every time you mess up or like break your crappy hammer, um it like adds onto your quota and you just like
Mm.
live through your quota life. Actually, there was a planet in 40K. This is actually like a canon thing, but it's every person is born into slavery and they have to like work off like all these like extreme like debts. Like you have this air debt because you took in a deep breath. Oh, you stepped on that soil. Oh, that's like $200. You got to work that off.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all kind of like, yeah, you might be getting compensation, but like not really. Like you're getting more penalties than you're even getting compensated for. And you probably inherited your father's debt, by the way, too, who inherited his father's debt, stacked that 10,000 years, and you're just this like, yeah, you're getting paid, but really you're not.
That planet
Yeah.
actually features in the text to speech series where I think it was Corvus, Corax, and Vulcan landed on the planet, and just for taking up the ship space and the airspace and all of their space marines and whatnot, they were all indebted to the Highborns on that planet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the planet's called like Japolian or something. But yeah, I love that episode.
That was a funny episode.
Hmm. Yeah. Cool. We'll jump to the next question. Question 9.
Question number.
Yeah. So, do you think there's remnants of ancient technology or forgotten Mechanicus sites hidden deep within the hives, possibly dating back to the dark age of technology? Gerald, what do you think on that one?
I'd say I'd say there's definitely, with how vast these hive cities are, there's definitely some treasures there. I'll put it like that. Like I think one often talked about thing was like how technology is regressing. So like the stuff like the Dawn Eagle jet bikes or the hover bikes that you see from like 30K, or the stuff that the custodies have. Certain hive cities, I think, is a big point in the Necromunda game that we can probably talk about in another episode. Was like you got these junkyard kids or gangers making their own jet bike. So obviously that's going to outclass just about anything else that you might get in just that one hive city. So I think there's plenty of treasure and lost technology to be found if it's still active.
Yeah, I think that's the key. If it's still active. Yeah, it's kind of like I love using ancient dark age tech as storytelling devices. Like you can just come up with such wild ideas, and it's not like an all-powerful doomsday weapon. It's like something unique and quirky and one-off. It's something that serves a very specific purpose. And that everyone wants, but they might not even know what it necessarily does. But I love kind of that ancient tech for just kind of coming up with that weird story hook. Jax, how do you feel about such thing?
Oh, yeah, I pretty much just agree. But in the Hell's Reach movie, at the very end, there was that like massive like laser cannon, and I'm having trouble remembering, but that was a Mechanicus, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where it's like they had to
yeah,
break the one guy had to break through all this code for this massive like laser cannon that like one shot like a stompa.
yeah, massive Ordinatus weapon. Yeah.
But it was like the Tech Marine was trying to do that because they didn't want to notify the Mechanicus, because then the Mechanicus was just going yoink. Nope, you can't have this. That's ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump to the next question. This one's a little more cultural. Music and entertainment. What's that saying about give them bread and circus, to appease the masses? So what kind of music, hollow dramas, underground entertainment venues exist to help hive dwellers escape their grim reality? Do you think they even have such a thing? Or is it just like, fuck you, you're doing what you're told, otherwise we all die? You first, specifically. What do you guys take?
If you guys don't mind. But ever heard of Nuceria with Angron
Oh boy.
and the gladiatorial pits?
Tell me
Uh,
more.
yeah, I feel like just like gladiators and such, like the old like ancient theme of just like giving like two people a sword and telling them to duke it out for the appeasement of the higher ups would be like
Yeah, like
maybe not
there's just
common.
that I could imagine it being very common though. Like there's just something inhuman where like we're saying we need conflict and chaos almost. Um and yeah, so then maybe you take your most violent criminals or some of these offenders and at least now you're kind of putting them to good use to entertain the masses. Um yeah. I think
Like
gladiatorial stuff would be very common for sure. Like
Mhm.
you instead of having your football teams, you got your gladiatorial teams and yeah, for sure, for sure.
this Blood Bowl, basically.
Yeah,
You have
exactly.
some rudimentary sort of television in each of the habs where these families are just kind of sat there in their downtime watching these Blood Bowl or these gladiatorial arena fights.
Or they're
Yeah.
sitting on their radios listening to Imperial approved broadcasts, of course, for the Emperor, you know. But
Yeah. I think the other big thing to mention would like, yeah, I could definitely see that happening, but then also on the flip side, like gets a little chaotic. So then I think, well, everyone has to go to church now. You know,
Yeah.
it's the only way
Like
to really like keep people sane or keep people wholesome to some
Right.
degree.
wholesome
And I'm sure
in
like
40K.
and I'm
Not
sure
in my
like
grim
the
dark.
upper hives, the people living there, I'm sure they have access to all sorts of stuff like parks and libraries and schools and a lot more than the lower hives do by far.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure there's like
And this
some
is
different forms of.
no,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Jack.
go ahead. Oh, okay. I was just gonna say like Gladiator, like as Nero was saying, like probably like on McCrag, like they probably don't have gladiatorial pits or like anything like super violent and stuff like that. Like parks and stuff, maybe like philosophy or I don't know what rich people do.
I don't- uh, that's funny. Yeah, like this would be another fun way to like for just like if you're writing your own hive world, like how do you appease the masses? What is kind of your planet's like sports games or like yeah, how do you keep the masses in check without the force of violence? Essentially, is the concept. But I
Yeah.
think you
Bars
can
and
come up with an
brothels.
infinite amount of possible. Yeah, no, exactly, for sure. And that would probably be very common too. Like that's doing two things with once. You're taking care of people and you're making a new population, which is also very important. So yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I kind of mentioned earlier about like, yeah, I bet homosexuals would be banned in 40K. You know what else would probably be banned? Abortion. That you're taking the emperor's children. Like these things would not be allowed in 40K. They would not be a commonplace. And yeah, you can find backwater worlds and all that, but like honestly, you let an Adeptus Arbites know that you just killed a servant of the emperor before they were even born. That's not allowed. You're not allowed
No.
to do that kind of stuff. I don't think you're allowed to mess with the flow of the greatest resource of the Imperium. But
Hitting
that's
all
maybe
the
a
tough
little
topics in 40K in one episode.
yeah, I do what I can for the people. I'll get my hate mail and I'll tell them to go fuck off, but whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
James complains. Yep,
James
make sure you
complains.
send
He
that.
can deal with it. The next question we got here is gangs and house loyalties.
Yeah, so how do gang affiliations function as families or tribes in the absence of traditional structures? Do gangs fill in roles typically held by religious or social organizations?
Or even like racial, since we're going heavy on all of it. Like, just kidding. We don't even need to. Yeah, man, you could draw gang lines upon many different lines, and like I just think of Necromunda and all the different types of flavors. Like I mentioned the House Eshin, which is made up of all females essentially, and you could draw these lines on so many different ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the thing I love about 40K is they give you like the building tools, but then you can just let your imagination run rampant because just the sheer amount of possibilities with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, but I remember reading this book called The Great Devourer Omnibus, and there were a few good stories in there. One like little thing that actually relates to a question, the first question you guys talked about, but that's for later. But the main thing I want to bring up with the gang thing is that in one of the short stories, an Eldari like Corsair band from a craft world, they like started a gang in like this underhive, and it's like called the Hand or something, and they started like preaching like kindness and like started like giving out food and like hope. They knew that there was a gene stealer cult like right underneath them from High Fleet Leviathan. So that's why they were kind of doing this, just kind of like some trickery stuff. But in the book, like most like the people like on the Hive world, they like didn't care that they were Xenos. Well, the ones close enough to know that they were Xenos. But they just like saw this like figure of like kindness and like hope, and they just like came to it like flies to a light,
Hmm.
and they just like it just became like a giant like gang almost.
Yeah, yeah. I could imagine even like a great way for Tau to destabilize a sector or whatever would be put some members of their agents down and try to recruit for the greater good. And now, that's a great way to kind of do it. That angle of like, yeah, of course, gene stealer infestations, but also many other Xenos are probably messing around down in the hives, doing stuff, getting away with it,
The best way to get started
Yeah.
right against the Imperium, just give the people some food.
Yeah.
So I actually that brings up a question I've got, and I'll direct it towards you, Jax. You're a Tau Fire Warrior. You just landed on a planet, and you just discovered your first Hive city. What do you think would be going through your head?
Well, there was a moment in like the Kaivis Kane novel where like a water cast Tau went to like an Imperial world, and after like Commissar Kane told them the population of the single Hive world, the Tau had existential crisis because it realized that whole Hive city outnumbered every Tau in the galaxy, like the whole population Tau in the galaxy, like 100 to 1.
Whoa.
Wow,
The
that's
first
crazy.
And
if I was a
well,
firewear here, I would like break down on my knees and realize, oh shit, we're dying here.
Yeah, you would finally understand why Tau belong in the 40K universe. People don't say they're grim dark enough, but that's the grim dark when they have that realization of what they're up against. They're this hopeful race, and then all of a sudden they walk up to a hive shit city and they're like, oh fuck. Oh fuck. And that's all they can think, man. Like that existential dread of we are so insignificant.
but then
What
that
do you
also
do?
leads credence to why are they such a major player when they are so small? Like,
Shitty
I don't
writing.
like if
Yeah.
they played up like the Covenant style conglomeration of aliens, that might be a lot. I don't know. I feel like that would be a lot better, make them
Yeah.
more of a bigger player. But like because such emphasis is on the species itself, they just I don't know. We've had this talk on listener lore before, I think,
Yeah.
about like yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll jump to the final question here. The role of the Adeptus Arbites. How often do you think, we've kind of answered this and touched on this, but maybe Jax will have something specific. How often do you think the Adeptus Arbites intervene in hive affairs, and what are some legendary cases that would lay down the law in spectacular fashion?
All right.
Like, what do
You
you,
guys don't
do you
mind
think the
me.
Arbites are most concerned about?
100% if they know about it. Gene stealers or Tau, just like those two would probably if they know about it. But
Yeah,
the
like one
thing
is a
about
corruption of the
Arbites,
body, and then one is a corruption of the mind. Like one's, genetic and one is ideology, both of which could be devastating, hard to combat.
yeah, but either way you're gonna lose the plan like if even one like gets through. But I actually just had like a funny thought. Like Arbites, like after like probably like 20 years of service, if they live that long, they've seen it all. They've seen like gene stealers, they've seen like orcs, they've probably seen like chaos incursions. Um After that long, it's just gonna be like that one news article where like a what was it, like a nut or something, like fell near an officer and he just like pulled out his weapon and just started firing in all directions.
Oh God. Yeah, I seen that video. I recall that. Yeah. Yeah, like I can't wait to
Shots
do
fired.
the Arbites because like you said, they're going up against some of the crazy nitty-gritty stuff of like fighting chaos when I don't think they should be fighting chaos. How do they mentally prepare themselves for that? What is their turnover rate after seeing all these horrors in the Underhive? Very cool.
Yeah, even then, in like the Eisenhorn book, like I believe they're used, but like I'll just use as a reference. Like if it comes to the point like chaos and like shit starts to hit the fan, um, there's gonna be like probably like you won't know it at first, but there's gonna be like an inquisitor there or something. And
Yeah.
once you know he's there, he's gonna have like full like ability to like you're under my command now, like you work for me.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like even Space Marines, like you were such a minuscule like before this, you were like a prominent like powerful figure, but now like there's demons over there, and that Space Marine's gonna shoot you if you even think of running or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you opened up this crazy door that opens up all these other Imperial factions to kind of come in and deal with. And you almost got to call them to come help you deal with some of these situations. And it's like, oh, fuck, now they're here, though. Yeah. Very cool. Well, I think that was the end of those questions. Any closing thoughts there, Jax, before we let you go?
Um, one of the things I wanted to talk about actually first was your first question on mutations, and I think a overlooked thing was gene stealers. Not like amongst the Loreborn, but in the Great Devourer Omnibus I was talking about earlier, there was actually a like the highest born like person, like the king, I believe, or something, or the king or queen was affected with a gene stealer, and they
Mm.
bore a brood lord child, and like because of the hive mind they were like forced to feel love for it, but like
Yeah.
even then like the broodlord felt love back for it, like it stated, like this tyrannid like disgusting little like bug loved its parents back, and then a bunch of grim dark stuff happens. And yeah, I think like a real like glossed over thing is that even amongst like the highborn, like instead of like incest, there's probably still like a bunch of mutations.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
for
anyway,
sure.
that's
Like
my
it just is
piece.
one of those. Yeah, no, I like that. Like, yeah, there's just there's so many bloodlines that try to keep their bloodline pure, but in doing so, they make it pretty fucking muddy. Yeah.
It's like if you ever look at the medieval pictures, the old paintings, and they look real weird. That's yeah, you know why.
That wasn't just weird
That was
art
a gene
style. That's
stealer.
what they looked like. Exactly. Cool. Well, thanks, Jax, for joining. I'll give you the boot there, and we'll close out the show. Alrighty. So, before we close out the show, a couple more details. Next episodes, we're going to be talking gangs and criminal organizations. And then following that, we're going to do some Adeptus Arbites stuff. And then this is where you, the listener, comes into play. Hop on Discord. We're going to do a cool Discord event where you get to write up a custom homebrew gang or Arbites. And the concept is we're going to battle them off against each other. So on the Discord, we'll take a poll. People can vote on if this gang went against this Arbites courthouse, who would win? What's the outcome? And we'll come up with a fun little battle and do all that kind of stuff and come up with the winner. So to get involved with that, like check out the Discord, but I'm going to kind of tell you this. It's probably going to be on the lines of write 1,000 to 1,500 words of lore for either a gang or an Arbites. So kind of start working on that concept of 1,000 to 1,500 words of lore. If you're a lore helper and listening and you want to run this, reach out. Or if you just want to help run Discord events, it's been fun doing different Discords event. Like we're doing movie nights and all that kind of stuff. So it's been very fun.
Yeah, it's been
closing
super
thoughts?
active lately.
Yeah, super active, man. I've been thinking too, like, it's almost time to start doing some Discord draws and some giveaways and some pour some money into the Discord. One draw I've been thinking about actually is flying somebody down to my Airbnb in Panama and giving them a 1-week vacation, paying for their flight or whatever, and getting them down here to play Warhammer on the beach. So, maybe that will be what the winner of this event gets. Hard to say, probably not. That one's going to take a little more timing or prep work, but that's the goal. We're really trying to fire up the Discord again and get some interesting things happening. So go join that and get involved. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, boys, before we end it out?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, the Hive cities, you could talk hours and hours.
Oh, yeah.
So.
We just did a 3-hour episode about them, man. That's crazy. That's
And we
fucking
didn't. We
And I
barely
feel
even
like we only-
scratched the surface.
yeah.
You literally took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I
We-
did
we
want to
would-
bring. I did want to bring up one more point, like the. I guess the percentages that Nick was talking about, and then the ones that I was talking about. Like, I don't know what. I don't know what. I think you said like 85% of the Imperial worlds were Hive
Something like
worlds.
that, yeah.
Yeah. See, the version I heard was like only a much lower percentage were actually Hive worlds, but of that low percentage, they contain like 50% of the population of the entire Imperium. So
Gotcha.
And we all know GW is very accurate when it comes to writing numbers. So you can
Oh,
sleep
they're-
well knowing that's a real
they're
fucking
the
stat. Oh man. Well, that was a fun episode. Thanks everyone for joining. Don't forget to support the show on Patreon if you like what we do. Also, you can get ad-free versions of the show. I've been honestly, I've been putting a little more ads into the show because that way it helps me grow. Now we're able to do 2 episodes a week. You know, we're going to start putting some money into, the Discord and stuff. So be patient with the ads. And if you don't want ads, you can go on to Patreon and get an ad-free version. Let's talk about some other projects we're working on. Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast. That's still happening. We just released an episode the other day. It's a slow grind, but we'll get there. Don't call that show over till I'm at 500 episodes. Gerald, what do you got? What are you up to?
So if you're done with the sci-fi, the grim dark of the 41st millennium, and you're more interested in fantasy type settings, well, come on over to the Grim Lore podcast, and where we do a lot of talk about Warhammer Fantasy and a little bit Age of Sigmar. And then if my co-host Ray and I deign to talk about other settings, well, we'll do just that. So give Grim Lore a listen whenever you're done with Lorehammer.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely want to do a crossover with you boys. I've been on your show before, but the crossover idea was like the differences of the warp between the 2 settings, but we'll leave it at that. It could be very fun. Nick, how about you? What do you want to shout out?
So as Mark mentioned with the Discord, Sunday nights we've been doing movie nights over on there. There is currently a poll up in the Lorehammer main channel, so go and vote for what movie you want to do, and then just come and hang out with us. It's a great place if you want to talk to some of the crew members here. Yeah, come and hang out with us.
Yeah, a lot of fun always. So Patreon supporters, thank you so much. Only one person has supported this since we recorded last. Like, we're doing a lot of episodes now, it seems. So, we don't stack as many up. But thank you so much to Alec for joining the Patreon and giving us $1. Every dollar helps. The more Patreon bucks I get, the less ads have to be on the show is kind of the concept. But like, unfortunately, the world runs on money. So it's kind of that catch-22 of, we got to make money so we can have some fun. So thank you so much for allowing us to have fun together. Well, we all had a good time. I'm going to say goodbye. Trevor Buzak out. Lorehammer Legal has my back for all the ridiculous shit I said this episode, so you can message them and not me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. As fun as always.
Good times were had by all.
Adios.